Recruitment is being announced for the palace guard under the command of Duke Curtis Schonberg. A group of cadets discuss the announcement and are surprised that it was signed by the hero of the royal army himself, Duke Schonberg. Some of the cadets are distrustful and think that the selection process is suspicious and that the Duke has a terrible character. One of the cadets confidently declares that she will take care of this issue. Her friend is shocked and persuades her not to get involved, considering this job to be real hell. The cadets come to the conclusion that the announcement is still up because no one wants to join voluntarily. The advertisement states that upon enrollment, a 200% salary supplement is payable quarterly. Upon hearing this, the cadets are surprised by the benefit and note that with such an increase, their family will be able to live comfortably for the season. The girl dreams of how she won't have to work so hard to earn money in the first quarter. She decides that even a war or a dangerous mission is worth it, because the service is only a year, and even if the Duke is strict, it's not a problem. Chloe decides that the most important thing is to keep her family from starving, and she sets about it with enthusiasm. Second Lieutenant Chloe Amboise receives strict orders and is forced to carry them out in full. Curtis Schonberg conducts a formation in which subordinates are forced to rest their heads on the floor. It is revealed that the culprit of the 200% increase is the same demanding colonel who is the main reason for what is happening. Chloe notes that no one has ever lasted more than 2 months under this man's leadership, promising to explain why. During one of the service checks, Chloe sighs heavily, realizing the severity of the situation. It becomes clear that the expression service check is a favorite phrase of Curtis Schonberg, which has become legendary among his subordinates. For Curtis, testing the service in practice means putting your head to the floor and enduring whatever it takes. Chloe, despite all the difficulties, decides to hold back and steadfastly endure any trials. Curtis insists that he punishes his subordinates for a reason, and that he works late himself, but he is still considered a crazy, tyrannical boss. Chloe sits at the table and decides to immediately destroy the incriminating piece of paper before her superiors notice. A ceremonial portrait of Duke General Curtis Schonberg, the king's younger brother and Chloe's immediate superior, appears. In the same portrait, Chloe maliciously finishes drawing a mustache and inscriptions, outraged by his workaholism and harsh punishments. Chloe panics and realizes that if the Duke sees the ruined drawing, she's done for. She comes to her senses and decides that any punishment is nothing compared to her plan. Chloe is encouraged by the thought that the main thing is that the salary is paid regularly. 3 months into her service, she remembers how she wavered between killing the Duke and committing suicide, but still holds on. Now Chloe and her fellow soldiers lie exhausted on the parade ground, and Curtis watches them calmly. The Duke sternly asks Sub-Lieutenant Amboise if she can hear his orders. Chloe jumps to attention and loudly reports that she can hear the order perfectly well, to which Curtis responds with satisfaction. Okay. Chloe salutes, embarrassed by her careless remark, and her boss assures her that he can hear her perfectly well. Chloe panics as she realizes her mistake, and the others playfully repeat her words about the Duke, teasing her. As punishment for his inappropriate words, Curtis announces a 30-minute extension of the service inspection, but then cancels the additional punishment. Curtis reflects that the junior lieutenant has become very relaxed over the past 3 months and comes to the conclusion that motivation is needed. He announces with a sly smile that the offense will be punished. Chloe exclaims emotionally in shock, not believing that she will actually be punished. In her mind, Chloe considers the savings of hiring a hitman and thinks that if she does it herself, she will be executed. But out loud, she reports to her boss about her readiness to serve. Curtis informs Chloe that she will be accompanying him to a diplomatic reception today, where another Duke will be in attendance. Chloe apologizes for not having an evening dress, to which the chief reminds her of the guard's dress uniform. Curtis gives orders to be at his mansion by 6 in the evening. Chloe cheerfully agrees to the order, mentally grumbling about the supposed murder. She says goodbye elegantly and formally, preparing for an important event. Entering the luxurious mansion, Chloe is surprised by its size and internally notes that this is the residence of the third person in the state. The butler looks at Chloe and is surprised that she was invited to the reception as a female adjutant, believing that the gentleman is serious this time. Chloe asks again in surprise, not understanding what these hints are aimed at. She learns that today's reception is some kind of viewing for her boss and is at a loss as to what to do. The Duke is to meet the Duchess of Glintland at an upcoming reception. The butler smiles and notes that the Duchess probably has other candidates, but the gentleman has his own weaknesses. Chloe is inwardly surprised by the concept of weakness in relation to her boss and admits that she would like to know about these weaknesses. Curtis notices that Chloe is late for her meeting. Chloe, with inner uncertainty, thinks about her appearance in a dress uniform and approaches Curtis, who demands that she not stand still. She quickly apologizes and runs over, and Curtis looks at her silently. Curtis notices that Chloe's uniform is wrinkled and wonders where her dress jewelry is. The chief hands Chloe the decoration and insists that his adjutant should not look sloppy. Chloe pauses in surprise and wonders in her mind why he is suddenly being so kind. In a panic, she apologizes again, and Curtis ironically suggests that she must have been shot. He sarcastically compares her to a pig in pearls, and Chloe snaps to herself that the boss is not so kind. Night falls on the city. The starry sky illuminates the castle with its burning windows. Inside the building, guests chat with each other, and Chloe looks around the setting with interest and admiration. Chloe is surprised by the abundance of artificial light, and Curtis urges her to stop looking around and concentrate. Chloe imagines herself attacking Curtis, but in reality, she quickly admits her mistake and rushes to make amends. The king greets Curtis and Chloe in the throne room, calling him Duke Bert. Curtis greets the king with respect, bowing low before him. The king, smiling, says that he was just looking for Curtis and invites him to come and take a look. The king points to a portrait of a beautiful young woman in a blue dress and announces that she is the Duchess of Glintland, Isabel. Curtis is surprised and asks why he wasn't told earlier why she was his future wife, and Chloe notes that at royal weddings, the groom is the last to know. Curtis objects that it is not Ivanez, and this is not a royal wedding, but the king is joking and insisting on marriage, pushing his brother to make a decision. Chloe watches the two brothers argue with bated breath, thinking about the tense atmosphere. Curtis apologizes and says he has a good argument against the marriage, surprising the king. The king does not believe Curtis's words when he claims that he already intends to marry another girl. Curtis suddenly puts his arm around a surprised Chloe's shoulders, leaving her shocked and confused. Curtis turns to those around him and confidently declares, "Here she is." He formally introduces Chloe Amboise as his newfound love. Chloe was stunned by what was happening and asked internally, "The thought follows that life never goes according to plan, even if the dream has long been defined." Chloe gripped the pen furiously and mentally decided to sort this out with this freak. She changes her plan and is eager to make him hit his head on the floor because of the incident that happened. Chloe imagines herself as a strict boss, loudly ordering Curtis to repeat his favorite, "put your head on the floor" routine. It is described that after this, their lives changed dramatically. Chloe is suddenly approached with an offer to get a haircut, highlighting the new changes. Chloe is surprised by the words and cannot understand if she misheard when addressing Curtis. Curtis reacts with confusion, embodying the tense atmosphere of the conversation. At the dock, Chloe talks to a co-worker who remarks that it's a good thing she tied her hair back, otherwise things would have been worse. A colleague explains that his lordship is terribly squeamish about certain little things. Curtis reminds in the evening that he cannot leave until he has finished work. He smiles and gives Chloe her next assignment, work late. Later, when she is about to leave again, Curtis asks with an ironic smile if she is going home too early. The next day, Curtis returns the report to her, criticizes it, and orders her to rewrite it completely. Now Chloe, changed and confident, commands Curtis to kneel, addressing him formally. The story flashes back to the moment of his confession, when Curtis calls Chloe d'Amboise his newfound love in front of the king. Curtis smiles and says that Chloe is cute in her slowness, causing her to explode emotionally and scream internally that he is completely crazy. Chloe begins to analyze the situation and realizes that the invitation to the reception itself was suspicious and decides to immediately fix everything. She is going to go to the king and explain the misunderstanding. Curtis stops her with a stern look and deftly informs her without words that he will explain everything later using his signature imperiousness. However, his power tactics don't work. Chloe doesn't get the hint. Curtis begins to formulate a speech to explain in detail what is happening. It lists possible benefits such as promotion, raise, transfer, vacation, and priority in salary negotiations. The king indignantly asks why Curtis is taking Chloe's hand, and the commentary notes that he is acting with unprecedented speed. Curtis suddenly promises Chloe whatever she wants. The hero's inner voice ironically suggests that those around him will now decide that, since he insists so much, perhaps he really is in love and wants to marry her. In the Ivan's empire, there is a strict law on marriages between different classes. If a duke marries a commoner, he himself becomes a commoner and loses his right to inherit the throne. To avoid this, the duke must marry a noblewoman, but he currently has no suitable candidate. If the duke marries the Duchess of Glintland, it will strengthen relations between the countries and please the king, but if he tries to avoid the wedding, he will have to find an alternative. Only commoners can help the duke avoid marrying a foreigner, so he has only two options. The first option is to marry a foreigner. The second is to marry a commoner and lose the inheritance. That is, it is a hopeless situation. At this point, Chloe appears and notes that her family, although very poor, is officially considered lower nobility. If the duke marries Chloe, he will retain his status and bypass the wedding with the duchess, choosing a woman who is easy to divorce and who cannot refuse a proposal. He also chooses the one he will never love, and Chloe herself proudly declares that it is she, Chloe Amboise. Chloe wonders if these terms are too favorable for her, looking at the king, the duke, and what is happening around her. Curtis lists the benefits that can be expected: a raise, a transfer, a promotion. He looks closely at Chloe and notices that she always looks like she needs money. Chloe is shocked to realize that her true motive is visible to those around her. I remember the scene with her younger brother, who is happy about any way to avoid going hungry, emphasizing their poverty. Chloe admits that his lordship has made her an offer, but privately resolves not to bargain until she receives payment. She suddenly comes to her senses and realizes that she cannot discuss such topics right in front of the king. Chloe cries out emotionally, saying she is so touched. She looks at Curtis with determination and agrees to his proposal, declaring it loudly. The final call to marry is made in front of everyone present. The couple stand together as a crowd of adoring onlookers watches, with Curtis reacting with restraint to the public outcry. Curtis, keeping a low profile, tells Chloe that they need to talk, and she happily agrees. During a conversation over tea, he remarks that 2 weeks is too little time to make important decisions. There follows an insert about Curtis's origin. He was born to King Ivaness and Princess Glintland. His mother was a very wise woman. Curtis's mother, concerned for his safety, asks to give her son both titles in order to protect him from political intrigue. At his mother's insistence, Curtis receives a double title from 2 powers. The problem was that Curtis turned out to be not only incredibly handsome, but also very smart and talented. He joins the army as the second son, but as long as he remains Duke of Bert, he has a right to the throne, which the king does not like. His interlocutor notes with surprise that he did not expect the king to try to get rid of Curtis by sending him to Glintland before he ascended the throne. He jokingly suggests looking for a bride among the girls in love with Curtis, mentioning that there is a certain Arya in Moorfleet, but Curtis objects that such a search will end badly. Curtis calmly replies that he already has someone in mind for marriage. Curtis, looking into his cup of tea, wonders how accommodating the chosen girl will be. One of the interlocutors in the luxurious hall asks who this unlucky girl is and notes that she is clearly unlucky. The next scene shows that this poor thing is Chloe sitting dejectedly on the couch. Curtis presents Chloe with the award and praises her for her great reaction, saying that he is pleased with her quick thinking. He admits that he did not expect such public support from her and is surprised by her acting skills at a difficult moment. Chloe agrees with a smile that she herself had no idea that she had such a talent. In a short flashback, the king clarifies whether Curtis and Chloe are truly bound by marriage. The king warns that lying to the monarch is tantamount to treason, and Curtis and Chloe are forced to confirm their version of events. Chloe explains that she hid this fact because she was going to refuse the offer. She adds that she considered his lordship to be completely frivolous and thought that he was simply playing with her feelings. Chloe recalls her doubts and fears that her love with Curtis was just a passing fancy and admits that she had been tormented by such thoughts for a long time. She emotionally realizes that if she had known about the seriousness of Curtis's intentions, that he was ready to confess his feelings to the king, she would have behaved differently. Chloe makes a comical, tense face as she mentally reminds herself to keep a straight face, and Curtis calmly notes that he too is incredibly happy. The king, with an ironic smile, admits that Chloe is a good actress, but doubts that this can convince him. Curtis asks in surprise if what happened isn't enough. Chloe, a little nervous, offers to show proof if the king doesn't believe her. The king asks again with interest about the proof. Chloe points to the brooch on her chest and explains that it was a gift from Curtis when he proposed to her. She clarifies that the brooch is engraved with the Burt family coat of arms and suggests that he see for himself. In conclusion, Chloe notes that even if it seems like a setup, then she and Curtis will not be able to change anything and will meekly accept the king's decision. Chloe points out that if she continues to demand proof, it will clearly not please the other nobles. She discreetly reminds that those present have no evidence to the contrary, so there is no need to spoil the mood and it is better to end the conversation. One of the characters ironically regrets that not everyone could see the expression on the king's face at that moment, because he was shocked and disappointed, and Curtis enjoys what happened. Chloe asks a serious question about what they are going to do next. Curtis says he would like to ask her for help, to which Chloe immediately assumes that he is talking about the wedding. Curtis admits that he is not talking about marriage, but simply asking her to pretend to be his lover, but admits that the situation has gotten out of control. Chloe considers the meaning of such pretense and formulates, "You want me to play the role of a girl with whom someone is in love." Suffering internally, she ponders whether she will marry without ever experiencing true love. Curtis thanks Chloe for her part in the plan, and she replies that she's welcome. Chloe decides to herself that no matter what, she must not end up losing. The girl in the blue uniform smiles and says that she has her own needs too. The white-haired man thinks about how much he has endured and believes that he deserves compensation. The girl confidently tells the man that he really needs her now and asks if he will do everything to keep her, to which he asks in surprise what she is getting at. The girl tells the man in the white and blue uniform to kneel first. The man asks in surprise if he really has to kneel before her. The girl, with a terrifying and teasing smile, calls the Duke to obey. Against a dark background, a vow is heard to avenge all night shifts and punishments. The girl, with a serious expression on her face, demands to show her his true mood. The man asks if she really wants this, and the girl insists that he get on his knees quickly. The man admits that he did not take her wishes into account and expresses his understanding of how important she is, which surprises her. The man says he seems to have missed an important step, and the girl looks at him carefully. The man sternly calls the girl Junior Lieutenant Ambroise. The girl asks what in surprise. The man opens the box containing the ring and explains that his mother received this ring from the previous king when he proposed to her. The man drops to one knee in front of the girl, who looks at him in shock. A man with a serious expression holds a box with a ring in front of him and asks if she will marry him. The girl looks up in shock, thinking about what is happening and does not believe in the reality of the moment. Duchess Glintland, with a cup, asks if Duke Berg has a lover. The girl notes that a wedding without a proposal is not the same and is surprised by the romantic side of the junior lieutenant. The man asks the girl with a slight smile if she is happy. The girl is indignant that a family wedding ring is too much and the man is surprised by her reaction. The man, kneeling, asks what she meant and the girl is surprised that it is not clear. The girl, looking serious, demands that he bury his head on the floor. The man replies that she must be joking. The man asks why to do this and what will it give, and the girl advises to remember the recent past. The girl reminds the man that he ruined her plans for marriage, asked for help, and now needs her assistance under any circumstances. The man gives in and says he will cry, and the girl agrees. The girl voices her concern that her family will be in the spotlight because of her relationship with him. The girl reflects that the wedding with the Duke is a test not only for her, and that her family will be laughed at because they are not his equal. She reports that she has 3 younger brothers and sisters who have not yet finished school. A guy in a military uniform listens to the accusation that because of his actions today, the girl's family found themselves in an unthinkable situation. The girl admits with a slight smile that initially she would not have agreed for any amount of money, but now the wedding with his lordship has become inevitable. The guy promises to take care of her family's safety, but the girl interrupts him with a sharp, "Thank you, but..." The girl confidently declares that no matter what, she wants to make it clear that she is the boss in this agreement, and demands that he bury his head in the floor again. The guy asks again with surprise if she really wants him to prove her superiority in this way. The girl, with a playful smile, suggests that if he doesn't like it, he can start a new life on the shores of Glintland. The girl herself wonders if she has gone too far. In close-up, she doubts whether she should have slowed down, but decides that in such cases, she needs to act tough. The guy finally understands what she wants from him and calls her junior lieutenant. The girl asks again in surprise. The man leans towards the girl and says that she will pay for forcing him to submit. The man lies face down on the floor and the girl stands nearby and watches. The man on the floor asks how long this will last. The girl asks in surprise if this is all serious, and the man reminds her that she wanted this herself. The girl allows him to stop and says that she saw his determination and is afraid of further revenge. The man is surprised by her words about revenge and asks if she considers him so low, to which she exactly agrees. The man calmly says that there will be no revenge, and now he knows for sure that she is the bride he needs. The girl smiles and asks if he thinks she's doing a good job of keeping the terms of the deal. The man says approvingly that, first of all, she is smart. The man explains that he does not want her to become a victim of the deal because it will leave a bad taste in her mouth, and in the future she will have to pay an even greater price for her participation. A man approaches a girl named Chloe Amboise and says that he is proposing to her again. He takes her hand and says that as long as they are married, she can use him to the fullest because he is a member of the royal family. The man explains that she will not become the mistress of his soul. Then he asks if she will become at least a temporary mistress for him. The girl gloomily reflects that she has just been compared to a temporary owner for a homeless dog. The man asks if she doesn't like it, and the girl replies that she doesn't have much of a choice. The girl agrees and says that she will become his temporary owner. The man shows a ring in a box and says that his mother's life changed a lot after she put on this ring. He puts a ring on the girl's finger, assuring her that it will also be good for her. The girl looks at her hand with the ring in shock. The girl is shocked to realize that she is actually engaged. The man says that they now have business, and the girl asks what it is. The girl thinks intensely about the fact that it is late at night, they are alone, and they are now an engaged couple. The man takes off his uniform, and the girl reacts to this in shock. It can't be. The girl is indignant that even if they are engaged, this is too much because they have a business relationship, and he is surprised. What is she talking about? The man claims that since they are engaged, she is not entitled to overtime and orders her to draw up a training plan for the soldiers. The girl blushes and calls him a liar. Shouts of surprise reach the castle. His lordship and Chloe are getting married. At his desk, a girl draws a portrait of his lordship late at night and is accused of suspicious behavior. The girl complains to her friends in a crumpled manner that his lordship does not understand her feelings at all, and one of her friends reacts to the situation jokingly. The younger sister is shocked and asks at the house what the older one did, reminding her that she recently called Duke Berg a goat. Chloe wearily tells her sister that the Duke does not understand her feelings, and her sister sharply accuses her of being mercenary. Chloe admits that it is true. The younger sister asks with disbelief and slight horror if Chloe thinks she's stupid. The eldest one responds with indignation, "Who would marry for money?" The younger one calmly asks when the wedding is. Chloe makes the number 7 on her fingers, hinting at the date. The younger one asks again with suspicion, after 7 months, and is surprised that it happened quite quickly. Chloe, with a tearful smile, clarifies that the wedding is in 7 days. The younger sister looks on in shock and then screams that Chloe has definitely gone crazy. The woman looks at the papers in surprise and wonders if all this is really because of this Chloe Amboise. In a dark room, a man is served a cup of warm tea and advised to drink the tea. At a candlelit table, one man asks another to tell him what he saw that day. The man nervously recalls seeing a ghost and cannot believe that the woman could say such a thing. A scene flashes before his eyes. Chloe calls Duke Berg her beloved, and the man himself holds his head in horror and does not believe that this was said to this terrible man right in the face. There is a commotion in the royal hall. Someone is outraged by the behavior of the Duke of Berg and his son, asking how members of the royal family can behave like that. The woman regretfully admits that she unwittingly sowed discord in the royal family and asks for forgiveness. The mustachioed man replies that he is the one who should apologize and admits that he did not expect such openness from a member of the royal family who clearly disregards the interests of the country. The woman adds that this may even be for the best for the royal family, surprising her interlocutor. She assures that the people would rather trust the king than someone who sacrifices the interests of the country for personal gain, and the man notes her business acumen with approval. The two are talking on the couch about how the marriage declaration is official and nothing can be changed, but love is a fragile thing, and one of the interlocutors suggests staying a little longer, considering it a great honor. Against the backdrop of the palace facade, they say goodbye. One goes off to rest, the other responds with respect. The woman screams in anger and throws the object. She holds her head in frustration, wondering why she came here and regretting that she couldn't meet someone before the wedding. Her gaze becomes determined. She thinks that this is not the end. Nothing is finished. At the building, they ask if anyone was called and ask where the things brought as a dowry are, offering to show them. A woman in a luxurious dress enters a room full of boxes and chests, along with a maid. She notices a display case with an antique green vase. The woman orders that this vase be sent to the Duke as a wedding gift. At night, at the large building, someone gives orders to Second Lieutenant Chloe Amboise, and she is allowed to enter. The girl in uniform is asked if the move is complete and if her family is settled in well, and she answers in the affirmative. She recalls that her family is delighted with the new house. One of the children thinks he is in heaven, and another is happy with a soft bed, considering it a floor. A colleague reports that the family's safety is ensured until the wedding and says that now the bride and groom must take the first step toward married life. 3 characters sit down at a table with papers and a marriage contract signed, preparing to discuss the terms. The girl with the papers suggests starting the check of requirements with the junior lieutenant and mentions the first condition of the contract. A large sign states that point 1 is a ban on overtime work during the contract, to which the girl demands that she be heard. The girl explains that the condition of overtime work is important not only for her, but also for the groom's reputation, asks if he wants to be remembered as a ruthless husband, and he replies that for his subordinates he is already a ruthless boss. The man says with a smile that overtime is inevitable, since the duties of the Duchess require participation in receptions and carrying out important tasks almost around the clock. The girl, shocked, clarifies that reception duties are considered overtime work, wondering how she hadn't thought of this before. The man nevertheless agrees that there will be no overtime work as part of his service in the Royal Guard, and this condition of the contract is confirmed. The man in uniform says that he must first consult with the military council to decide whether Chloe can remain his adjutant after the wedding, and Chloe confidently assures him that everything will be fine. The man ponders that if not Chloe, then who else could be his adjutant, since there is no one left in reserve, and suggests moving on to the next point. The contract stipulates a requirement of $1 million in advance and a 400% salary increase, to which the guy agrees only for the advance, causing a violent reaction from Chloe. He jokes that the salary is not paid out of his pocket, but from the treasury, and if he approves the promotion, the king will immediately find a reason for punishment. Instead, the man offers to pay Chloe's entertainment expenses, $10 million a year, which Chloe is delighted with and declares that she will gladly marry him. The next clause of the contractual agreement states to always obey Chloe Amboise. The man is irritated and outraged by the new tests, and Chloe hastens to assure him that such tests are not required. She asks that this requirement be simply documented and states that she has another special point, asking that it be included. The contract officially includes a clause stating that Curtis Schonberg considers Chloe Amboise his boss and treats her with the utmost respect. The final clause is that if Chloe Amboise makes any demands 3 times during the term of the contract, citing the document, Curtis Schonberg is obliged to fulfill her demands, which leaves the man puzzled about the meaning of this condition. Chloe indignantly asks if he thinks she's a magic lamp, and the man is sure that she's thought of everything. The girl declares that she's actually going against the king, and the man agrees with her reasoning. Chloe notes that it would be easier for the king to deal with her than with a man, and here's confirmation. She is surprised to realize that her life and her family are in greater danger than his, and the man admits that she is right. The character proposes to move on to consideration of the demands put forward by his lordship. The contract contains a clause stating that Chloe d'Amboise, having taken on the Berg family name, is obliged to perform the duties of a duchess. The next clause of the contract states that Chloe and Curtis's relationship is based only on the contract and the girl cannot interfere in his personal life. Chloe is surprised by the mention of her personal life in the document, and the man jokes that they don't plan to be together forever, asking if she's already fallen in love with him. She reflects that all this seems incredible and again wonders about his personal life. The girl is stunned to see that someone like him would even discuss such issues. The characters at the table are discussing whether a man is capable of building relationships, and one of the sitters looks thoughtful. The man in uniform asks in surprise who they think he is in this situation. One of the characters notices that the man looks like a robot, which causes him some confusion. Chloe jokingly compares the man to a robot vacuum cleaner, and he angrily points out that without the 3rd clause of the contract, she would already be under arrest. The man calmly declares that he will start an affair with another woman and get divorced, to which Chloe comments that the reason for the divorce will be his betrayal, considering this a favorable condition. The participants in the discussion move on to the next point of the contract, recording the prohibition on interference in private life. Chloe asks the man what personal space includes, and he replies that it includes the bed. The man adds that to maintain appearances, he will even have to deceive the servants, and expresses surprise that Chloe is so zealous in defending her position, although she herself does not want to share a bed with him. Chloe, putting on a serious face, categorically rejects any hints of feelings for the man, saying that it would be better for him to give up this idea. The man sarcastically replies that he is just starting to develop feelings, but it is more anger than romantic interest. Chloe signs a clause in the contract that stipulates that she will not interfere in Curtis Schonberg's personal life and will not experience or show romantic feelings for him during the term of the contract. Curtis adds that Chloe must tie her hair back and wear long clothes in bed, and the order is accepted. The colleague ends the discussion by declaring that the agreement is over. Curtis warns Noel about the need to keep the agreement a secret, especially from Agatha, and he responds with understanding. Chloe learns that Agatha is Noel's younger sister and expresses surprise. Noel, remaining calm, says that Agatha is in love with Curtis, which shocks Chloe. The characters show sympathy for Agatha due to her unrequited feelings, discussing how she does not have the same privileges as Second Lieutenant Amboise. Noel states that Curtis's title will pass to his children, adding intrigue to his comments. During the discussion of the dowry, Curtis states that he does not expect a dowry from Chloe as a common soldier and agrees to pay for everything himself. In response to the dowry joke, Curtis points out that the figure should be 80 million sin, leaving Chloe completely confused. Noel reports that Glintland has offered 80 million as a dowry, considering it an open challenge, and hands the contract to Curtis. Curtis, accepting the contract, notes that such a sum creates the impression of great love for the bride. The clause in the contract is shown in large print. The title is transferred to the children of Curtis Schonberg and Chloe Amboise, and the dowry is 80 million. Both heroes feel responsible. Chloe looks at the contract thoughtfully, wondering if she can handle the responsibility that has fallen on her. The man places his hand on the table and agrees that the contract is over. He approaches Chloe with a proposal to move on to the very essence of the wedding. Chloe repeats the words in her mind in surprise, the essence of the wedding, and looks thoughtfully at the groom. Scene change. An unknown girl in a wedding dress winces and says that it hurts, and the man asks if she is giving in too easily, because this is not the first time. Chloe runs out of the fitting room in tears, screaming that it's just an awful dress and indignant that this is the first time this has happened. She is even more indignant. Does everyone really get married in such an outfit? And jokes that other girls really don't have bones. But her friend notes that the wedding dress is the most important thing at a wedding. A friend asks if it is possible to choose another dress because this one is too tight, but she is told that this dress belonged to the bride's mother. The groom smiles and says that his love is embedded in this dress. Chloe angrily wonders if she can kill him for all this torment. The seamstress consoles the girl, promising that after the wedding she will sew her 1,000 dresses to fit her figure, if only she will be patient a little. Someone pulls the corset up onto Chloe's dress, causing her to cry out in pain. Chloe falls to her knees, exhausted, thinking she can't take it. The groom, approaching Chloe, notices her problems with strength and asks her to give him a ribbon for the dress. Curtis carefully helps Chloe with the corset, standing very close to her. The seamstress watches what is happening in confusion and then quickly leaves the room. Chloe blushes and remarks to herself that she and Curtis are too close to each other. The girl with blue hair feels the breath of a man standing very close to her. She catches herself in a strange, new feeling and is surprised by her sensations. A man suddenly pushes another woman away with a sword, causing her to become frightened and shocked. The man is annoyed and surprised that his attempt was unsuccessful. He believes that the girl has a serious injury and she mentally confirms her suspicions about the strange sensation. The girl thinks it's all about her posture and the man looks at her with a menacing grin and a raised sword. A man discusses preparations for a wedding and finds out that it won't be possible to sew a new dress in 3 days. The man thoughtfully ponders what to do in this situation. The girl suggests decorating a ready-made dress to save time before the wedding. She decides to take on decorating a ready-made dress and wonders how long it will take. The girl explains that first you need to find a dress of the right size, then try everything on and choose jewelry so there is little time. She is surprised and asks if she should start preparing right now, and then asks to wait. The girl tells those present that she has an idea. The bright morning of the wedding arrives and a majestic palace is shown. The weather is wonderful and sunny, the birds are singing. A handsome groom prepares for the ceremony. The main character of the wedding, the bride, looks exhausted and surprised. The groom notices that the bride looks tired and she mentally complains about the number of ceremonies and guests. In the dialogue, the girl says that being a member of the royal family is not an easy task, advises to envy only those who were born that way, and jokes that you can't even hit them. The third character notices that the uncle teases his future wife too much. Prince Frederick appears, attracting attention. Frederick turns to Second Lieutenant Chloe Amboise and says that there is no need for formalities because in the evening she will become his superior. Chloe refuses to mince words and says that until they are married, she is just a soldier. Prince Frederick is surprised and notes to himself her devotion and wonderful qualities. He jokingly asks Chloe if she was forced to marry his uncle, telling her to blink if she was, and is told by the others not to joke. Frederick says that he only came to say that his uncle is waiting for Chloe in the chapel, and receives the answer that he would have said so right away. Chloe feels a little awkward being alone with another boss. While his uncle is away, Frederick turns to Madame d'Amboise and asks her to ask him a question. He asks why she is marrying a duke. Chloe reacts thoughtfully and cautiously, wondering if the prince is testing her now. The prince replies that there is love between the couple and reflects on its meaning with a smile. Frederick recalls that on the evening when his uncle made a scandal at a reception, he immediately came to him. A man in military uniform asks permission to use the chapel. In response, he hears that the chapel cannot be used for the wedding since His Majesty will not allow it. The man asks to promise that this will not happen again. The hero reflects that this is a strange promise for a man who created a scandal at an official event because of love. Frederick thinks that, frankly speaking, he understands his uncle. He says that his uncle is not interested in the throne, but his father is jealous of him and tries to control him, even sending him to another land under the pretext of a wedding. Frederick explains that there, the uncle would have been given an abandoned plot of land and essentially sent to die fighting pirates, and adds that, of course, he doesn't like it, but he understands everything. He notes that such a union is not beneficial for the girl. If she wanted to advance in her career, she would not have spent so many years in the army. Even if you have agreed on money, after the divorce, the king may take revenge on you and all the property will turn to dust. It won't be possible to continue serving in the army since they have already fallen out of favor with the king, and overall, it's too risky a decision. Frederick asks her to answer honestly why she is marrying his uncle. She admits in her mind that she wants to see this bastard hit his head on the floor. The girl realizes that the prince is a very intelligent person and that she has caused him a lot of trouble. In fact, she has long been in love with his lordship and thinks that it is worth strengthening this. She says that the Duke's military exploits were in the newspapers, so she applied for the position of adjutant and got a good job. The girl considers herself very lucky because she was lucky both in work and in love. She thinks sheepishly that perhaps she went a little overboard with the story. The prince tells her that she is worthy of becoming a duchess, and she, in surprise, thanks him. The man smiles and tells the girl that there is nothing to thank her for and makes a remark about her ability to lie well. The young man reproaches his nephew for making fun of his aunt, but he himself explains that he was simply worried and decided to ask. The man with golden hair asks if his uncle is even capable of love and admits that he would rather make fun of his nephew than the people. The young man waves his hand and says that the priest is waiting for Frederick, and he quickly leaves to avoid further teasing. Frederick, leaving, tells Madame d'Amboise that he hopes to hear the truth from her. The hero admits that he really wants his uncle to find true love. Against a bright background, he adds a humorous piece of advice not to forget about the carrots, says goodbye, and leaves. The girl and the man watch as Frederick walks away across the yard. The couple remain close, silently looking forward, hinting at the tension of the moment. The girl's inner voice notes that this is impossible. Then the couple leaves together, discussing upcoming affairs, and she agrees with it. The guests discuss that Duke Berg is getting married too hastily and wonder if everyone is waiting for the wedding. 3 girls in evening dresses laugh and speculate about why everything is happening so quickly, making playful and slightly indecent suggestions. The men formally note that the ceremony is proceeding according to the rules, but the bride is too poor and something needs to be done for her. The girl with red hair notices that among the guests on the bride's side there are only children, but no parents. The young man is unhappy with the noise in the hall and is indignant, believing that the place is only for guests from the bride's side. The girl and other children calm him down and ask him to be patient, because he is irritated by the behavior of those around him. The black-haired man warns that anger could bring shame to their sister, but he himself doubts that his words could actually bring shame to her. Against this background, a striking woman with long pink hair appears, who assumes that someone else has come to disgrace the bride. Those present discuss that this is the Duchess of Glintland, an incredible beauty to whom the king specifically gave the title to seduce the duke. The girls discuss how the bride will not be able to compete with her in beauty and that it will take more than a dress and makeup to win. Guests discuss how even Queen Mildred's dressing room has been emptied for the wedding and wonder whether the bride will be able to compete with such luxury. One of the guests formally asks those present to take their seats, and the atmosphere is set for the beginning of the ceremony. The Duchess watches with interest and expresses a desire to see how the bride has prepared for the celebration. The ceremony begins. The official announcement of the marriage of Brigadier General Curtis Ciernak Anna Ivanesberg and 2nd Lieutenant Chloe Amboise is made, and the couple is invited to walk down the aisle. The bride and groom, attracting the attention of the guests, come out together and move towards the altar. One of the guests, perplexed, notices something unusual about what is happening at the wedding. There is surprise as the bride and groom walk down the aisle in military uniform. The narrator suggests going back a few days to the scene when Chloe was struggling with the corset. An alternative, more humane method of wedding preparation is discussed, and Chloe shares her idea. The heroes note that at a royal wedding, only the crown and belt are really required, without which the marriage is considered invalid. Crown Princess Beatrice is sending a crown, so there is no need to worry about this point. A man in military uniform asks if the bride is going to wear only a crown and belt, to which he receives a negative answer. The girl in the white and blue uniform reminds them that they are the royal guard. It is joyfully announced that the guards have a white dress uniform. The woman asks in surprise whether the bride really wants to wear a military uniform and receives confirmation. The girl explains that her fiancé loves her very much, is a little rebellious, and the choice of form will show devotion. The decision to go in military uniform will emphasize that the groom is not at all interested in the throne. The characters discuss how this move is actually a great idea, creating impact and humor. Despite the seriousness of the moment, the groom thinks about it and then agrees that the idea is not bad. The couple decides to have an unprecedented wedding in military uniform, which causes surprise and discussion of the wedding dress as a political move. A girl in a military uniform with a crown notices that the combination looks unexpectedly harmonious and better than she thought. One of the guests admits that she expected failure. The bride will not be able to compete with the Duchess of Glintland, but changes her mind. Both main characters are shown as beautiful in their own way, each with a special charm against a backdrop of flowers and luxury. Reverend James Luther officially announces his role as witness to the marriage and begins the ceremony. The priest asks the newlyweds if they are ready to swear eternal love before the faces of the gods. The groom's internal monologue is filled with doubt. Eternal love seems impossible to him. He is sure that their paths will soon diverge. The groom looks at the bride and thinks that the second marriage will definitely be easier. An image appears in the girl's mind. Then she will choose not a military uniform, but a beautiful wedding dress and will smile truly happily. She dreams that her true love will be next to her at that moment, and she will truly remember this wedding. The groom, despite his outward silence, is internally irritated by what is happening, not fully understanding his own feelings. The groom internally reflects that he is actually thinking about other things, but out loud he makes a vow of love. The priest asks the same question to the bride, and she also calmly says yes. The guests are surprised to notice that the groom is smiling for the first time in their memory. They discuss his beauty and admit that they came to the ceremony for his sake. The priest asks if the groom wants to present the bride with a symbolic gift before the gods, and he confirms that he does. An exquisite decoration with pink stones is carefully placed on the scarlet pillow, a wedding gift. The groom suddenly embraces the bride and presses her to himself, making a meaningful gesture. The bride is embarrassed, feeling that things have become very close and clearly unusual between them. The groom looks at her and says that everything is ready. The girl with the crown and new necklace notes that the jewelry really looks good with a military uniform. The priest suggests moving on to the next part of the ceremony, and the groom adds that there is one more important point. A man in gloves opens a beautiful box which contains a massive gold ring with a large, square purple stone. The women at the table exclaim that this is the famous ring of Queen Medrea, the flame of holiness. The man takes the bride's hand and says that he is giving her a ring as a sign of love and fidelity. He ceremoniously places the ring on Chloe d'Amboise's finger, symbolizing a special bond. The guests are amazed and discuss whether the Duke is really giving her this rare treasure and whether he is serious. The others present are surprised not by the gesture itself, but by its meaning. If it were Chloe Burt, this would be normal, but now the ring is being received by Chloe Amboise. The girl is surprised to think that the Duke is giving the ring to her and not to the future Chloe Burt. Close relatives note that this ring now belongs to their sister, regardless of marriage. Chloe looks at the ring in confusion and mentally asks what this is all for. The protagonist uses his gaze and gesture to convince her to behave naturally, hinting that his main way of communicating is to speak with his eyes. Chloe quickly takes in the situation, mentally asking why she was given such a valuable ring. The man notes with a smile that she has begun to understand him better and suggests that she consider this gift a special sign. He clarifies that this ring is compensation for moral damage. Chloe is surprised to herself because she doesn't understand what kind of damage we're talking about, since she was given such an expensive thing. The priest announces the next stage of the ceremony and says that the groom can now kiss the bride. Chloe reacts to the priest's words with surprise and uncertainty, not immediately understanding what is happening. The man warmly and humorously reminds her that this is a wedding, and she needs to understand where this is all heading. A touching moment follows as the groom gently takes the bride by the chin and their faces come together for a kiss. A solemn and tender kiss takes place between them in front of everyone present. A view of the majestic columned building at sunset as guests and newlyweds disperse after the ceremony. The two girls discuss the Duchess of Glintland, wondering at her failure and wondering about the feelings of the Duke of Berg. The girl with red hair tells of rumors that he hastily married due to pressure from the king. A blonde man passionately kisses a dark-haired girl against a background of flowers. The characters comically discuss with delight that this is true love and are surprised that the couple left immediately after the ceremony without a reception. The red-haired girl dreamily assumes that the newlyweds are now enjoying each other's company. In reality, the newlyweds with serious faces brush their teeth together. The dark-haired girl complains that this is too much of a loss for her, and the young man wonders if it is not obvious that kissing is customary at a wedding. The girl with her mouth full agrees, but she still feels awkward. A young man in a robe and with a towel over his shoulder hears from a girl an accusation that he is a real grump, and he is reminded that he has already changed his clothes. The dark-haired girl remembers that it was not just a kiss, but something much more. A girl with blood on her toothbrush brushes her teeth in embarrassment, and the man explains that he did the right thing to avoid gossip. A man in a blue robe offers to get rich by selling a ring, and the girl drinks from a mug, and he adds that she will be able to sell it only after a divorce. The girl is surprised that they still have some things to do after the wedding, and the man suggests finishing up with the business first. The man reminds her that today is her first day as a duchess, and asks if she has a servant, to which she replies negatively. The man says with a smile that new days are beginning for his servants. He leads her to the window, greets her as Madam Duchess, and shows her a large courtyard with numerous servants who will help her. The girl looks at the crowd at the window in bewilderment, admitting that it is a little scary. She wonders if she really has to command all these people, looking at the crowd of servants in the castle hall. The man says with a smile that 80% of these servants are the king's spies. The girl in uniform and with red eyes reacts to this news with nervous surprise. Philippe Deltan introduces himself as a very sophisticated butler. He says that he controls all the servants of Bert's house. He says that he was originally supposed to become the chief chamberlain of the royal court, and someone asks in surprise what he's talking about. With an expression of shock, Philip recalls the news that he is to become the butler of the Burt household. The king orders Philip to watch Curtis's every move and report to him. The king adds that it would be just wonderful if Philip could expose Curtis's weaknesses, and so Philip ends up here. Philip analyzes Curtis's past, noting that he used to be an inveterate workaholic and everything came down to work and sleep. Now he reasons that everything will change because of the Duchess, a problem for the whole family since she is a commoner from a poor family and served in the Navy. Philip asks Sub-Lieutenant Monfils when the Duke and Duchess will appear and is told that they are currently resting. He is indignant that the Duchess has a high opinion of herself and is even insolent to the Duke, and then orders him to convey that they will wait here. Philip, with a sly smile, thinks that the Duchess is now becoming arrogant because of her new position. Philip considers the Duchess an upstart. He is sure that she will relax and will definitely make a mistake. Philip mentally wishes for the Duchess to disgrace herself in front of all the servants, watching her go out to the people with the Duke. Philip is looking forward to showing the Duchess what it means to be part of high society, and the Duchess is nervous as she walks down the steps. Philip speaks condescendingly, confident that everything is happening as he expected. Philip greets the Duke and Duchess in front of a sunset landscape, respectfully noting their visit as an honor to the house. Philip thinks ironically that the Duke does not have very high standards, since he chose exactly such a wife. The Duchess formally greets the butler, asks for assistance, and extends her hand for a handshake. Philip is surprised to himself that the Duchess does not even know how to treat servants, but out loud he assures that it is a great honor to serve her. The Duchess questions Philippe about his service at the royal court, and he confirms that he is the fifth son of the Delton family and worked at court. A girl in a white uniform and a man discuss whether she combines the positions of chamberlain and butler, and she explains that she serves only Berg by order of His Majesty. The man asks if this means that she is now only a butler, she confirms, and he silently expresses indignation at the impossibility of combining such positions. The girl sternly asks why the man is behaving provocatively. The man in the dark suit asks again in surprise, standing among the other servants. The girl next to the blonde reminds them that they are tired, but the man insists on greeting them. The man is surprised to himself by the girl's sudden change in behavior, but out loud he apologizes and justifies his ignorance. The man justifies himself by saying that he was ashamed not to greet them immediately and expresses curiosity to see a woman living with a man before marriage. The girl reacts sharply to the man's words, becoming indignant, and denies his hint, asking what the reason is then. The girl accuses the man of bragging about his incompetence, and he justifies it by saying he is busy preparing for the wedding. The man mentally resents the reproach, and then, confused, clarifies that he is again at fault, expressing surprise. The girl says that she would understand the man's ostentatious flattery and arrogance if he served at the royal court, but this is not the case. She reproaches the man for his constant sarcasm and asks what she should think of such an impudent butler, and he internally notes that from the very beginning she was looking for a reason to find fault with him. The man justifies himself by saying that he was misunderstood. He said a compliment because he is happy as a butler who has served this house for a long time. The girl, with a mocking smile, clarifies that if she were not beautiful, then there would be no joy for him. The man insists that he really does think the Duchess is beautiful, and in the background she comments on this to her husband. The blonde notes that the man is lenient in the mansion, but does not give his subordinates a second chance, to which he replies that the mansion is not an army. The girl says that despite a recent reprimand for a mistake, the man continues to be stubborn, and only a fool would do so. The man hastens to assure that he was in no way judging her, but only wanted to pay her a compliment. The girl doubts that this looks like a compliment, and he is confused and does not understand what she's talking about. She recalls that when she offered him a handshake, he deliberately refused to accept the gesture. The man thinks to himself that it is a great honor for him to serve such a beautiful lady and says it out loud as he shakes her hand. He justifies himself by saying that it is just a habit and a gesture of politeness, but the girl asks if such a lady is really not worthy of a kiss on the hand, and he is confused. The girl admits that the butler was very diligent in trying to catch her in bad manners, but says that she understands all his veiled insults perfectly well and considers them cliches from an etiquette textbook. The girl decides to translate the meaning of what was said and internally explains that, in fact, his words mean doubt in her beauty and origin. She also mentally translates another phrase from the butler, implying that he is reproaching her for not knowing the rules of etiquette. The girl continues her internal translation and believes that his words hint at the fact that she is shameless because she lives with a man before marriage. The girl asks with a smile if this is true, and the man panics and denies it and makes excuses. The man loudly declares that he, Philippe Delton, is devoted to Milady with all his heart and assures that he is telling the truth. He admits to himself that he wanted to embarrass her, but in the end he found himself in a difficult position, surprised at how cunning she was. The man is mentally amazed that she turned out to be so smart and inventive, and his imagination paints her as a formidable winner. The man decides that he needs to retreat and bows and apologizes to the standing couple. He lies face down and admits that he was so happy to arrive that he went beyond acceptable limits, and he is told that a new owner will soon be arriving. The man asks again in surprise about the new owner and thinks about it. He mentally asks himself if they want to fire him, and remembers that the king himself sent him, reasoning that he cannot be gotten rid of so easily. The couple looks at him with ominous eyes, and the man is internally frightened, wondering if they will be able to get rid of him after all. The man is confused and thinks that if she doesn't follow the rules, this is entirely possible. The blonde, smiling, stops the situation and reminds that the man is the king's man. He confirms to his interlocutor that Chloe is indeed offended, and he internally does not know what to do next. The blonde says that he doesn't want to fire the butler because it would be an insult to his brother, and he thanks him and agrees. The blonde claims that the butler ruined the first day of their married life and demands an apology, pointing out that he needs to apologize properly. The blonde man with a mysterious smile thinks that there will be a punishment in the form of a service check. The man recalls in shock that the service check is like a punishment for soldiers. The blonde asks the girl for her opinion, but she thinks it's too soft and asks to clarify what punishment the butler will face, other than being fired. The man on his knees ponders out loud what could compensate for his spoiled mood. The girl smiles ominously and suggests an option, perhaps execution. The man, in a panic, mentally remembers that she served in the Navy, and imagining how she might accidentally shoot, is amazed at her wit, but hopes that she will change her mind out of pity for the king. The blonde asks in surprise why Delton is standing there and taking so long to react. The blonde man sternly warns him that if he doesn't bow his head to the ground, his wife may well shoot him. Delton, with a frightened face and a bow, loudly asks for forgiveness from the Duchess. With the astonished maids in the background, Delton humiliatingly repeats his name and mentally notes that he has never suffered such humiliation. The girl, clinging to the blonde, says that you can't punish him twice for the same thing and regretfully declares that she will have to forgive the butler, but only this time. She warns that if he does the same thing again, there will be no forgiveness. She threatens that next time the bullet will fly out before his head hits the floor, and the butler, frightened, agrees. The butler, in a panic, asks for forgiveness, and the girl willingly agrees to consider the apology. The girl announces with a smile that the butler must do this for 3 hours, and he asks again in horror. The girl tells the others that she is hungry, frees everyone, and calls them to prepare dinner, and the butler cannot believe that he was left alone in such a situation. He is internally surprised that he was really left alone to stand like that for 3 hours among the courtyard and the maids, and everything is so simple. The butler, lying in the courtyard in front of the mansion, does not believe that everything is happening seriously. Meanwhile, in the mansion, the girl happily enjoys delicious food and sweet wine at a richly laid table. The girl is happy, having both a delicious snack and a beautiful view, and someone from outside the window asks if she is happy. The girl says that all the stress has disappeared, and the blonde advises to have fun because it will only get harder ahead. The girl asks about plans for the future, and the blonde warns that it will be harder for her than for him. The girl learns that she will sleep in the main building on the second floor of the East Wing, directly below the blonde man's room. He notes that it is a bit cramped, but if you need a larger room, you can take his mother's bedroom on the third floor of the West Wing, although he does not recommend it. The blonde explains that there are no secret passages in the mansion. It is not intended for the royal family, and the king literally locked him in here. He adds that if an unexplained fire breaks out in the girl's room, it will be easier to escape from the second floor than from the third, and the girl is nervous about the dangerous prospects. After hearing everything, the girl suddenly lost her appetite, to which the blonde replied that she would get used to it over time. The maid asks if they have finished dinner and receives an affirmative answer. Maid calmly informs them that she will now accompany them to the bathroom. The girl suddenly remembers and nervously realizes that today is their first wedding night, and the maid adds that everything is prepared for the newlyweds, emphasizing the exciting moment. A blonde man and a girl in night clothes enter a gloomy, spacious room and note its unfriendly atmosphere. The gaze stops at a stand with several swords and muskets, weapons that can be used instantly. The next accent is on the bare walls of the room, which makes it easy to identify the killer. The girl thinks with some confusion that she will now have to live here. The blonde man and the girl stand next to each other and she formally addresses him, raising her glass. The blonde says that this is the first time he has encountered such a situation, which surprises the girl. He then wistfully notes that for the first time, a woman was in his bedroom. The girl coldly thinks that everything that is happening is complete nonsense, and an internal siren goes off. She concludes to herself that the one who talks nonsense is a goat, and the goat deserves to be shot, and checks to see if she has a weapon at hand. The girl is frightened to discover that the gun is not nearby. The blonde laughs and asks if the girl is looking for a gun, noting that she is very funny. He is pleased with himself and believes that he made the right choice of wife, because this is exactly the reaction he wanted. He reflects that only thanks to this approach would there not have been such a distance between them. A memory of a wedding appears with inexplicable irritation at the ceremony. This is followed by a scene of an impulsive gift that the blonde man gives to the girl during the ceremony. They remember their kiss, implying that without it, everything would have been in vain. The blonde sits down on the chair and remarks that it's a good thing he's not the kind of husband who checks the sheets after the wedding night. The girl ironically replies that there is nothing to be happy about, because her husband probably doesn't intend to touch the sheets even after the wedding. The guy looks at the girl in a thin negligee and pays attention to it. He adds that they are alone in the bedroom and slowly touches the lace of her dress. The blonde man asks the girl in a relaxed gesture if she is not at all afraid of the situation. He internally admits his mistake in asking such a question, and the girl calmly replies that she believes him. The girl says that few people can become a reliable commander in 3 months, thinking about trust and time. She adds that she believes not in his humanity but in his inhumanity, which confuses her interlocutor. The girl accuses the man of forcing her as an adjutant to work until exhaustion and then offering her a fictitious marriage, emphasizing his lack of conscience. She argues that he would hardly want to ruin everything with a whim, otherwise his body would be buried in Glintland, and the man smiles in response. The man is surprised by her confidence, but the girl winks. She threatens to then kick him in the groin so that he cannot have children and jump out of the window, shouting the word, freedom. The girl dreams of what beautiful rumors will spread if the Duchess runs away on her wedding night, and she is sure that the king will definitely be informed about this. She adds with a sly smile that she herself will tell the king about the rapist duke, and the guy admits with annoyance that nothing like that will happen, to which the girl sums up, "That's great." The girl says that if everyone is finished, she will go to bed, says goodnight, and climbs onto the bed, and the blonde man asks in surprise what she is doing. She coldly states that since he is so sure of her inhumanity, it is time to live up to his expectations. Instead of making any romantic moves, the blonde orders her to work, and a mountain of documents and papers appears behind his back. At night, the girl remembers to herself that he really is vindictive. In the morning, the girl literally falls face down into her plate at the table, complaining of fatigue. The maid is surprised by her condition, and the girl admits that she didn't get enough sleep at all. The maid notes that 3 hours of sleep is too much for newlyweds, and the girl sadly says that the one who kept her awake all night is to blame, which shocks her interlocutor. When the maid is about to bring something light to eat and leaves, the girl wearily thanks her. At breakfast, the girl jokes that the man is very lucky to marry her because now he has a hard-working wife at hand, and he, smiling, agrees. The girl notices a wound on his arm, looking in surprise at the man who reaches for the strawberry shortcake. The girl asks the man if he is hurt, and he suggests switching to informal address so as not to create rumors that the ducal couple addresses each other formally, even in bed. She notices internally that he takes even concern with hostility, agrees, and reminds him about business. The man wonders if she really needs to test her food for poison and asks who she thinks he is. The girl thinks out loud about who he is to her, an evil boss, a subordinate, a husband, and finds the last definition unpleasant. The man admits that there is indeed a lot to do. A diplomatic reception is coming soon. He needs to greet the nobles and fight off the king's attacks. He adds that they will also have to write thank you notes for the wedding gifts, showing the urn given to Isabel Glintland. The girl is surprised because the losing party usually does not give gifts at a wedding, to which the man replies that perhaps that is why the gift is so cheap, although it seems beautiful. She asks if she can write letters about work, and the man is surprised that she is already getting ready to work and advises her to take a rest. The man reminds her that she can't always wear pajamas because there's a reception soon and she needs to rest, choose a dress and jewelry, to which she agrees. The girl admits that she doesn't understand expensive things and asks permission to buy whatever she wants, to which the man calmly replies, "I understand." The man says that he allocates money, advises to walk around the shops on Pafton Street. Buy everything that you like, and over time, taste will appear. The girl teases the man with a smile, surprised at how easily he throws money around, and asks what if she spends his entire fortune, and he answers with interest whether she is sure she can. The man admits with a slight grin that he is inhumane in many ways, even in finances. The girl in the elegant dress asks excitedly and with surprise what is happening. She and the man look up in surprise as a drapery or shocking object appears in front of them, emphasizing his inhumanity. Against the backdrop of the mansion, a girl named Agatha Monfries is crying. She is outraged that she was abandoned for another and complains about the Duke's cruelty. The Marquise Flandre, holding a fan, calmly and tiredly comments that what's done can't be undone, and silently complains about when Agatha will stop crying. The Marquise asks to bring her some ice water. The servant reports that the ice has not yet been delivered and promises to send another servant. The Marquise drinks her tea wearily, realizing that the delay with the ice is simply a show of force on the part of the other side. Another girl asks why His Majesty does not want to give ice, and the Marquise explains that the king is busy and the interlocutor assumes that he has a lot of state affairs. The heroine irritably thinks that someone is mocking her by entrusting her chores to a servant. The newspaper discusses how the sheet on the balcony of the Duke's mansion is actually a threat to Curtis's supporters. The heroine considers this gesture petty and complains that the glacier belongs to the state, and she does not tolerate the heat well. The girl notices a beautiful and probably expensive vase in the room. The owner of the vase says there are some minor issues with it, but nothing major. One of the girls reacts indignantly to the question of how much longer she will suffer for Curtis and declares how much she loves him. The interlocutor recalls the scandal throughout high society and says that after that, the heroine behaved quietly. The heroine justifies herself by saying that she joined the royal guard only for the sake of her lover, in order to be closer to him. She complains that she tried, but her brother never helped her, and that the result of her efforts went to someone else. The interlocutor notes that Curtis is already married, advises her to pay attention to someone else, and says that then it will be easier for her. The girl thoughtfully repeats about attention, thinking over what was said. She enthusiastically decides to buy some special stone, considering it better than the Flame of Holy. The girl invites her aunt to go together to the Basilar store, where the relic was previously purchased. She insists on going together, promising a walk and ice cream, and the aunt thinks about it. The aunt thinks about it and agrees, which makes the girl rejoice with joy. A young man in dress uniform looks at him in surprise and asks a question. Another man explains that the Duke's marriage has been announced, to which the first man replies that he already knows. A woman in an unusual outfit critically discusses how happy Chloe will be with this man. She asks the young man if the king will really be satisfied with just one marriage certificate. A fair-haired man in a military uniform appears, who is called Your Highness. A girl notices a scratch on a man and he asks her to ignore it. She casually says that it doesn't matter if he has wounds and wonders why he didn't use her blood. The guy asks her in surprise if she thinks anyone believed it. He asks what she will get out of it, and she responds with a counter question about whether there is any need to get anything at all. The young man covers his head with his hand and thinks about the impulsiveness of his actions. The story shows that the king did not demand proof of the first night, since it was clear to everyone that the marriage was concluded under duress. A girl with blue hair falls asleep while writing letters, and a guy watches her from afar. A man smiles while looking at someone with tenderness. The scene with the bloodstains is shown, and it is explained that Curtis bled anyway. The Duchess's bad reputation is discussed, the question being asked why such sacrifices should be made, and the conclusion is that it is foolish. Junior Lieutenant Dubu is assigned today to accompany and guard the main characters in place of Captain Monfils. The junior lieutenant has a noticeably strange expression on his face, and his gaze shows contempt. However, he shows interest in Chloe. The protagonist notices that the situation is becoming interesting, because they communicated while serving in the guards. The man says that today his wife is going to Pafton Street, and she is the one he will be guarding, which surprises the girl. Chloe wonders why she needs such a high level of security for a routine matter, and worries that it will be awkward if the lieutenant starts asking about her relationship. Her husband mentally tells her to figure it out herself and notes that the lieutenant is ideal for this role. He adds that we are talking about his dear wife, and Chloe thinks with irritation that there is no arguing with that. From the carriage window, the heroes notice a familiar pastry shop where their sister bought them cookies. The lieutenant watches from the window, and Chloe calls out his name in surprise. The lieutenant addresses the woman as Your Grace. She asks him not to call her that, but he refuses. The girl thinks that he might have been offended by her words. She is mentally indignant because she thinks they are friends and remembers funny scenes from the past. The lieutenant admits that there are reasons for his behavior and says that he understands her. He assumes that it is difficult for her to talk about her personal life, and she notices that he still acts formally. In another part of the crew, a younger girl points to a toy store, and a woman suggests that she play silent to avoid an awkward situation. They finally arrive at Basler's jewelry store. The lieutenant tells the girl that it is time to leave the crew. In response, she mentally warns him not to complain to her later and calls him a bastard. The lieutenant calls out to the Duchess in confusion as she leaves, and the heroine herself moves forward. Chloe thinks Ezra is too touchy and is sure that she likes this attitude. People on the street notice the Duke's carriage, call out to the Duchess, and ask if she's alone today. The crowd bombards the Duchess with questions about where she is going, who is accompanying her, and what the sheet means. Chloe is relieved to finally enter the store and notes that she didn't expect the journalists to ambush her. The girl is surprised when she is recognized inside and asked if she really is a duchess. They are greeted by the sixth heiress of the Basler jewelry house, introducing herself as the Viscountess. The Viscountess asks permission to kiss Chloe's hand, which leaves Chloe puzzled by such a gesture between women. Chloe tries not to show her confusion and remembers that her vis-a-vis has many titles. The lieutenant explains that for security reasons, permission cannot be granted, and Chloe justifies that she simply wanted to look at the Flame of Holy. A ring with a large purple stone appears, and it is said that the heroine's father found it, and the cutting revealed the true beauty of the stone. Viscountess Basler happily says that she is happy to see this sparkling ring, and Chloe notes that her mistress clearly adores jewelry since she even wanted to kiss her hand. The Viscountess invites her to go to the second floor and warns her about the steps. Chloe thanks her, being interested in her interlocutor. Camilla Basler is introduced as the Viscountess's younger sister, who works on the third floor. The Viscountess removes her veil to show her guests something special. She proudly announces that this is the main exhibition hall of Basler and delights the guests. Everyone admires it, noting how beautiful it is and how everything sparkles, to which the Viscountess replies that she is glad that they like it. The Viscountess admits that she was going to visit Chloe but was surprised by the unexpected news of the morning and invites the guests to sit down. She says she doesn't know much about jewelry, and so she wants to see everything from cheap to expensive jewelry. The Viscountess replies that for a complete impression, one needs to compare different options, but clarifies that the store sells only select expensive items. One of those present remarks that if you look only at good things, your taste will develop, and everyone agrees to look at the collection. The owner of the store promises to show all of Basler's goods and assures that such quality cannot be found anywhere else. Chloe is amazed by the beauty of the jewelry and begins to examine one of the items. The Viscountess tells a long story about the famous necklace that started the war, and Chloe privately remarks on her fanatical love for jewelry. In the end, the hostess emphasizes that the choice of jewelry is a matter of taste, and even the most expensive will be useless if the owner does not like it. The Viscountess asks if the guest liked anything, but Chloe hesitates and notes that everything is beautiful, but something is missing. Chloe says she's having a hard time deciding, citing her promiscuity, and the owner reassures her that this is normal for newbies. The hostess advises choosing jewelry based on your favorite color, and Chloe is surprised that such a choice can be easy enough to buy an expensive item. Chloe believes that her mistress is shocked by her frivolity, but admits to herself that she regrets spending money on jewelry. Chloe mentally rebels, believing that jewelry is just beautiful and useless stones and does not understand how one can pay a fortune for it. The maid of honor reminds that, despite the personal attitude, various decorations are still needed for receptions, going out, and everyday life, and they will definitely come in handy. Chloe admits with a smile that her common sense is not working in this place. She decides to choose something more modest, but her sister insists on spending more money and not choosing modest colors even for jewelry. The sister grumbles that because of Chloe's preferences, her wardrobe consists only of dull brown things and suggests that she even give the Duchess jewelry of this color, to which Chloe hotly objects and defends her favorite color. The girl angrily says that she also wants to wear beautiful jewelry and clothes from Chloe's wardrobe, like other girls, and expresses dissatisfaction with the situation. The maid of honor and the hostess laugh and advise Chloe to buy something really beautiful, reminding her that the Duke has given her permission to spend money. The lieutenant explains that her sister buys brown clothes because they remind her of Iris, which surprises the girl. She responds by saying that Sister Rhea is lying and the real reason is that brown is cheaper because it doesn't require dyeing, which causes Chloe and Iris to be outraged. The youngest of the shop owners covers her mouth in horror, shocked by what is happening. Camilla quickly apologizes for her behavior and admits that she was remembering her childhood with her sister, while the older hostess demands that she apologize to the guest. Both sisters kneel before Chloe to apologize, but the Duchess asks them to stand up and believes that they behaved badly for allowing such an argument. Chloe says she knows the girls mean well, and Camilla repeats her apologies, slightly embarrassed. Camilla continues to apologize profusely, even though Chloe has already said more than once that everything is fine. When the tension subsides, Chloe asks if Camille really is a jeweler and hears confirmation. Chloe asks to see necklaces similar to what Camille herself wears, and she reacts with surprise. The Viscountess explains that they don't sell that kind of thing, and Chloe is surprised, thinking that they should sell items of the same workmanship as she is wearing. Chloe says the big stones are nice, but they're not something you'd wear every day, adding that she'd like to pick out something for her sisters, too. Camilla clarifies that similar pieces were the work of their father and offers to show the collection, to which Chloe agrees with interest. The girls open the display case and show the collection that Camilla's father made. Chloe admires the decorations, finding them cute, and noting that these options are suitable even for children, and Iris is happy with the decoration with a heart. Camilla explains that they used to sell these kinds of pieces, but the store changed its policy because they were too cute for the upper class, although they look great on Chloe. Iris, sitting on her sister's lap, happily shows the crown and calls it a princess crown, and Chloe agrees that the decoration is very beautiful and made for a real princess. Camilla reveals that their father died 10 years ago and that jewelry like this is no longer made, which surprises Iris. Chloe examines another crown with black opals and clarifies that opals only began to be imported 5 years ago. The Viscountess is amazed at how Chloe got such information, to which Chloe explains that in those years their navy was preparing for war because of these stones. Camilla justifies herself by saying that she did not want to lie to the Duchess, and Chloe calmly admits that she actually made the crown decoration herself, noting to herself the pointlessness of long stories about something that cannot be bought. The older sister explains that she didn't want to tire the Duchess with unnecessary excuses, and Chloe is mentally surprised because she has already said more than once that everything is fine. Chloe suddenly remembers that she is a duchess and realizes the full responsibility of her status. She muses that this is why people are so afraid of her, imagining herself sitting on a throne in front of her servants. Chloe is relieved that she didn't go to work today because she could have gotten into trouble without realizing it due to her absent-mindedness and fatigue. Despite the easing of the situation, Chloe still feels a slight tension, decides that it is time to leave, and smilingly says that no one was offended, she just likes it better this way. Chloe notes that it's a shame that such jewelry is not for sale, and the owner says that such items are most likely liked by those who don't really understand jewelry. The girl in the yellow dress exclaims in surprise, calling one of the women Madame Monfils. The local owner wonders how she got into the shop at all, since the establishment is rented exclusively for the Duchess for this day, and the entrance should be closed, and Chloe thinks about the name Monfils and remembers only one such person. At this time, at another table, a man tells Noel about a secret that must not be revealed, especially to Agatha, and receives in return a promise to remain silent. The girl asks who Agatha is, to which she is told that she is the younger sister, and one in love. Everyone is surprised by this situation and sympathizes, as Agatha does not even receive an advance like the other second lieutenant, and then Noel is given the task of preparing a fake contract for the royal family. Chloe puts the facts together in her mind and realizes that Monfils is the same unfortunate woman who is unrequitedly in love with Curtis. The hostess tries to tactfully suggest that Monfils' guests discuss the issues elsewhere to avoid awkwardness. However, she is indignant at why they want to transfer her and asks with resentment whether the other guest is really more important than herself. Chloe, not hiding her emotions, repeats this question out loud. Second Lieutenant Dubu sternly tells Monfils to stop in order to stop the argument that is starting. The girl in the yellow dress happily greets Duba and asks if he is the one who booked the entire store today to choose a ring for the bride. Dubois formally calls her junior sergeant once again, and Chloe mentally notes that Lieutenant Noel Monfils is a very bright person. Chloe describes Noel as a polite, conscientious, and caring worker, which surprises the girl. At the same time, she notices that his sister, on the contrary, seems a bit of a rebel. The girl is offended by this, she exclaims with indignation what you said. The girl begins to defend herself and asks if Chloe really thinks that she is the fiancé of Junior Lieutenant Dubu. Chloe asks again with a slight smile and irony. The girl replies with annoyance that how would she know who Chloe is and is clearly confused by the situation. Chloe says with a grin that there were plenty of opportunities to find out on the way here, with reporters outside and store staff inside. Chloe sarcastically remarks that not knowing her is the same as admitting stupidity, and the girl is surprised and indignant. Chloe makes a mental note of how angry her interlocutor is. She reflects that the woman looks very young and doubts whether she is even 20. Chloe decides not to quarrel with someone she considers a child, because in front of her stands the one whose feelings and unrequited love she unwittingly destroyed, so she officially introduces herself as Chloe Ledavidaberg. Chloe admits that she understands the reasons for the anger, but suggests not to fight, and at the same time notes that everyone in the room is uncomfortable, while the second girl internally considers this position impudent. An accusation appears in the girl's mind. On the first day after the wedding, she appeared with her lover. Chloe, completely confused, asks again what kind of lover he means. The girl confidently notes that we are talking specifically about a lover, emphasizing that it is an unofficial relationship. Chloe mentally analyzes what is happening and tries to determine who is being talked about, remembering those present, her relatives, and two unfamiliar women. The gaze falls on Junior Lieutenant Duba as the only man, but he begins to justify himself, saying that he does not understand what is being discussed, and the girl demands that he not pretend. Second Lieutenant Dubois introduced Second Lieutenant Amboise to his family as his future wife, and the entire guard knows about it. Amboise reacts to what he hears with surprise and doubt. Amboise realizes that standing before her is the same idiot who once used his sister's name to avoid marrying her in front of her mother. It all started 2 months ago when Ezra Dubois was tired of constant requests for marriage at one of his drinking parties. The older sister got the title, responsibilities and fortune, and he dreams of living freely without responsibility and power, so he wonders why he is constantly invited to the bride show. At the table, his friends joke that, thanks to him, his parents will live forever because they promise not to leave this world until they see his wedding. The black-haired friend enthusiastically announces that he has a brilliant idea. They suggest telling the family that he is dating Chloe, much to Ezra's shock. The friend adds that if he announces his marriage to her, his parents will be shocked. Amboise notes that her only virtue is her family, and her only weakness is everything else, and to top it all off, she served in the Navy. A flashing scene of Chloe being dressed up as a bride appears before my eyes, with a caption next to it stating that she is the worst candidate for a wife, according to Forbes. During the feast, the friends have an emotional argument over the comments about Chloe and demand an apology, but Chloe herself remains indifferent. One of the interlocutors is surprised by Chloe's attitude. Chloe, holding a mug, notes that no one is going to take her home, so she doesn't care what they come up with. The friends panic and call for Chloe, causing a hilarious brawl at the table. At this time, Ezra's house is in a panic at the news of a possible wedding, and everyone is categorically against it. Despite this, a frightened Ezra exclaims that he will marry Chloe and thus receives a delay from the real wedding for several years. In gratitude, Chloe receives many boxes of expensive sweets for her birthday. The friends discuss at the table how delicious it was, and Ezra admits that it was just a joke that went too far, but hears in response not to lie. Chloe reflects on the fact that she even agreed to a sham marriage to humiliate her boss for the sake of sweets because, unlike humiliation, at least sweets can be eaten. A woman with long blonde hair is indignant at how a junior lieutenant can support a lady who, after 2 months of dating, left him and married a duke. Chloe feels awkward and internally reflects on how the situation appears from the outside, trying to explain the misunderstanding to the junior sergeant. The fair-haired girl comments ironically that the Duchess, who talks about misunderstandings, has been with a lover since the first day of her marriage, and asks if Mr. Curtis knows about it. Chloe says that the Duke himself appointed 2nd Lieutenant Dubois as his guard and does not rule out the possibility that Curtis might not know something. Chloe says with bewilderment that she herself did not know about the fact of betrayal and wonders how the Duke could have found out about it. The blonde girl is about to voice 2 more important points, causing Chloe to ask a question. Chloe says with cold determination that she has eyes, turning to Junior Sergeant Monfils. Ezra, thinking, notes that such hints are unpleasant to him and wonders what is wrong with him. Chloe, holding up 2 fingers, continues that the second one is not a misunderstanding at all, and adds that she knows her opponent doesn't like her. Chloe explains that she is a higher rank than a junior sergeant, even though she is currently on leave. Chloe smiles and clarifies that her interlocutor is now simply the daughter of Count Monfils, to which she responds with confirmation. The blonde girl claims to be the Duchess of Berg, as if trying to increase her own importance. Chloe calmly and charmingly notes that her status is much higher. When asked who can confirm the Duchess's status, Chloe smiles and says it's Curtis, adding that confirmation is not required. Chloe notes that her opponent is not even Ivaness or Schönberg, hinting at her lack of noble origin. The blonde girl first freezes in indecision and then begins to get even more upset. Chloe asks in bewilderment if her interlocutor is really crying. Chloe asks if the girl is crying because of the Archduke, and she replies that not at all and that he has nothing to do with it. The upset girl, in tears, wonders if Chloe really likes the Archduke so much and asks if they are trying to provoke her on purpose. Chloe calmly replies that the Archduke is not worth her tears, and her interlocutor falls silent in confusion. Chloe thinks to herself that her interlocutor is actually still a child and apologizes for disturbing Lady Basilar. The blonde girl is surprised, and then Chloe suggests that everyone go their separate ways. The girl in yellow disagrees, to which Chloe insists that she leave. Chloe says that hierarchy is not important to her, but if someone else's logic is followed, then now she should be served. The blonde girl ironically remarks that Chloe is looking for cheap goods here. Chloe doesn't understand what they're talking about, while the girl notes that Basilar has become a bad store since it offers low-quality goods. A girl with dark hair appears, asking for forgiveness and mentally regretting that she did not get rid of the low-quality jewelry in advance. The girl in the yellow dress suggests checking whether Chloe is really the most important person here. Chloe is surprised and mentally puzzled when the girl calls Aunt Marie and asks to look. The girl in the yellow dress informs the woman in the green dress about her encounter. The woman depicted in the portrait was at the top of the list of aristocrats that Curtis especially valued. This is the Marchioness of Flanders, the king's younger sister. Now it becomes clear why Agatha behaved so boldly and felt so confident. A few minutes before the events, it turns out that the place for today was booked by the Archduchess, and the journalists noticed this. Agatha indicates to the guards that she has come accompanied by Her Grace Flanders. Agatha confidently declares that she will enter because she needs to show the Archduchess her superiority. The Marchioness of Flanders asks if Agatha has already left. Her interlocutor replies that yes, after which the Marquise asks to call Camille and receives confirmation. The Marquise apologizes to Camille for the sudden intrusion, knowing that she had a meeting with another client, but Camille says that there is no need to apologize since they have not been to Basilur for a long time. The Marquise notes that old acquaintances are allowed to do a lot, but still one should not cross the line of what is permitted. Curtis appears on stage with another military man and clarifies that, as for criticism, it certainly does not apply to the Marquise. A young man with long hair apologizes for not keeping an eye on Agatha, and the other man replies that he understands. Curtis hears a question about his appearance and explains that his second companion objects to him leaving his wife alone after their wedding night, which evokes understanding from the listener. The blonde smiles and apologizes for arriving uninvited and receives in response from the Marquise that there is no need to apologize since he was going to visit her anyway. The Marquise and the others present are amazed that he called her sister because no one expected such a warm word from his cold nature. Curtis explains that he should visit the Marquise because she is a respected person in high society, to which she asks if that is the only reason, and he laughs it off. Curtis suggests going upstairs first, gesturing towards the stairs. While moving up the stairs, one of the companions becomes indignant. What kind of aristocrat would agree to such an adventure just for the sake of cookies? The blonde calms the woman down, promising to immediately break off relations with Agatha, but asks her to keep it a secret for now. From behind the slightly open curtain, the conversation reaches the room with the lieutenant, Chloe and the girl in the yellow dress, where someone ironically remarks on the lieutenant's speed, because only 2 months ago he was dating a sergeant, and now he is already married to an archduke. The men discuss the argument they overheard, not understanding what it is about, and one of them explains that it is a well-known story in the Guards. The question arises as to whether the two actually met, and the interlocutor explains that it was merely a suggestion from Sergeant Dubois in response to a provocation at a drinking party. When asked additionally where such confidence comes from, the hero smiles and says that he himself was at that event. The blonde man announces with a smile that hiding such funny stories will result in a pay cut, and jokes that he should also be reduced for creating such stories. The question soon arises as to whether Mr. Curtis knows about these circumstances, and the girl suggests that he most likely does not know, since it was he who assigned Sergeant Dubois to guard her. The interlocutors make friendly jokes at each other, thank each other for the ban on marrying a relative, and note that they have enough of such a sister at home. I recall the episode with the confirmation of the status of the Archduchess, in which Curtis intervenes and adds a caustic remark about belonging to high society. Through the curtain, a question is heard about the reasons for the tears, to which the girl replies that the Archduke has nothing to do with it, and the hero ponders whether she is stupid or smart, because even in such a situation, he thinks about Agatha. Another woman appears behind the curtain, getting tired of waiting and laughing at what is happening. Suddenly, the woman decides to intervene, intending to stop what is happening, but her name is called and she reacts in surprise to something she sees. The girl in the yellow dress indignantly tells the lady in the green dress about what happened in front of Chloe. The lady sighs and with slight annoyance reminds Agatha that she asked her not to call her aunt in front of others. Chloe solemnly greets the Marquise of Flanders and states her full name. The Marchioness of Flanders immediately realizes that Chloe is the same Archduchess who married her younger relative, and notices that her military service has given her problems with etiquette. Chloe curses silently as she realizes the situation and apologizes out loud for trying to follow the rules. Agatha complains to her aunt that Chloe likes cheap things and that Chloe treated her badly. Agatha suddenly comes to the conclusion that if this is so, then she too is cheap and is surprised by this. The Marquise turns to Camille, or Lady Basileure, saying that it was necessary to explain to Agatha that these things were given to her in her youth by the previous king. Agatha is shocked to hear the true origin of these things. Curtis shows up and says he wanted to give the Archduchess a gift from the store because his older sister once used the items, and everyone is shocked to see that Curtis is there too. On display are several tiaras and necklaces that the previous king had specially commissioned for Princess Marietta. Chloe understands why Basileure did not want to show her these decorations, because the Marquise of Flanders clearly supports the king's side and does not want to spoil her relationship with Curtis. The Marquise asks her guest if she likes the tiara, and she admits that it is very beautiful. The white-haired girl with the tiara remembers how her father forgot her age, and wearing such a decoration at 20 years old was already ridiculous, but it contains a stone that is priceless. The shop worker gratefully says that her father always worked on the tiara with special care, and she would never allow herself to treat it carelessly, noting her admiration for this decoration. The Marquise assures that the goldsmith's work is excellent, but adds that at her age she rarely wears precious stones, turning to her sister. Curtis solemnly and formally introduces Chloe Reed David Schonberg to everyone as his wife. The Marquise playfully remarks that fate itself brought them together. Chloe wonders why the lady continues to wave her fan all the time, although the room is not at all stuffy, and at that moment, her name is heard, Mr. Curtis. Agatha runs into the scene, trying to justify herself, and turns to Curtis, claiming that none of this is true, to which Curtis calmly calls her by her last name, Lady Montpes. Curtis hugs Chloe close with a wide smile and happily confirms that it is indeed so. Agatha screams that she doesn't believe it and demands an explanation as to why he left her and married this woman. Curtis coldly remarks that, despite the incident in the Carillon Hall, Agatha has remained frivolous, although he once wanted to make her an archduchess. He further adds that, judging by her current reckless behavior, it is good that he changed his mind, while Agatha persistently calls him Curtis calmly says that he did not leave Agatha for the sake of marriage, and her status did not affect his attitude in any way. Agatha, in despair, admits that she truly loves him and even joined the royal guard for his sake. Suddenly, he changes his tone and coldly asks who asked her to do this in the first place. The Marchioness of Flanders sympathetically informs Agatha that the ice cream will have to be put off until another time while she cries. The second soldier asks permission to take his leave since Sergeant Dubois is present, citing the need to calm Agatha, and is granted permission. Agatha leaves in tears with her escort, and the women who witness the entire scene breathe a sigh of relief. The Marquise expresses regret and apologizes, repeating that she did not know that everything would happen like this, and Curtis says that if she had known in advance, everything would have been even more difficult, adding in response that he remains just as straightforward and rude. The Marquise asks to be introduced to those present, to which Chloe introduces her sisters, Leah and Iris. The Marchioness apologizes for today's situation and is about to give the tiara to Lady Iris, but Chloe sheepishly protests against the gesture. Curtis says with a smile that, as a younger brother, he will apologize for Chloe because it is only the first day after the wedding, and asks to allow his wife to protect her pride herself. The Marquise, with a slight hint of intrigue, says that she wants to ask for something in return. After the tense scene, Chloe and Curtis relax at the table, and Curtis admits that he can barely catch his breath. In the illustrated scene, Chloe comments on enjoying ice cream and relaxing, Ezra accompanies her sisters, and everyone sees the Marquise off safely. The Marchioness sternly warns Curtis that there will soon be a meeting in Eleanor so that he can prepare his wife, and adds that today she actually saved him. At the table, Curtis asks Chloe if she has heard of such events, and she confirms that something like that has been said. Chloe smiles and says that, of course, she has never been to a meeting at Eleanor because it is a famous salon created by female officers. That is, it is a gathering of noble ladies. The dark-haired girl learns that she not only needs to attend, but also to become an organizer. A boy with blonde hair thinks about what his sister said. The girl with a serious expression says that Lady Montpas's attack today was expected. The dark-haired girl complains of a headache. She asks why they are looking at her like that, and the blonde man wonders what he did. The blonde is indignant, believing that he is being accused of ridicule, and wonders whether he really looks like a person who likes to criticize everyone. The girl replies that he is no different from others, and he is surprised and asks who she takes him for. The waiter approaches the girl, and she says that the ice cream is delicious and asks if she can take it with her. The waiter explains that the ice cream may melt on the way, ice will be needed, and this will increase the price, apologizing for such a practical conversation in front of the Archduchess. The girl suddenly addresses Curtis by name and approaches him, surprising him. A girl with dark hair and a boy with light hair find themselves very close to each other, and he is amazed by this. The girl apologizes and admits that she does not know the culture of high-ranking aristocracy. She whispers in the guy's ear, asking if it's okay to take something like this with her, and he is surprised by her question. The girl asks again in surprise if she can take it. She explains that she wanted to send the ice cream to the Marquise of Flanders, not eat it herself, and the boy thinks how close that is. Another girl says she's too hot and feels sorry, so she lets them send ice cream. The girl with dark hair asks the waiter to send the Marquise of Flanders ice cream with lots of ice. They ask the waiter how much needs to be delivered and whether there will be any problems with storage, and the girl replies that there is a dungeon with ice at home. The waiter confirms that he has understood everything and can send the ice cream to the mistress of the estate. The guy asks the girl to finally sit down, and she wonders if it is really rude to speak while standing, to which he shyly asks her to just not come so close. The girl asks if she smells anything and suggests that it's the perfume that Julia sprayed on her, and the guy confirms something similar. She is internally perplexed as to how it turned out that they share the same bed and calls the guy a unique tuberculosis patient. The girl reflects that if she were in her sister's place, she would repay the debt in a different way because jewelry or clothing seem like a bribe, and she is not sure that she can please the tastes of a person who was born a princess. The girl is happy that the Marquise will be able to eat as much ice cream as she wants because today she herself was unable to try it because of the guy. The guy notes her thoughts and is surprised that she even sent ice, and then they discuss how ice is not just an additive to ice cream. The guy says that she is very insightful, thanks her for her care, and the masters also express gratitude for their help. The The girl finds out that the demand for things was created because of her order, and the guy humorously orders to buy everything that his wife touched. She is upset that they have bought up almost half of Lady Camilla's collection, including her own accessories. The guy notices that the girl's face doesn't have a very happy expression, asks if she likes anything, but she replies that she likes all things. The guy asks if she only likes things, and with a hint of vanity asks, "What about him?" The guy in the dark glasses thinks that the order to buy everything his wife touched for $120 million in cash is a waste of money and a ridiculous order. The guy tells the girl that these are all her things and asks her not to say that she will keep them after the divorce. The girl exclaims that she will waste everything she has, and the guy notes that she quickly grasps the point. They are going to look at clothes in the right size, and the girl admits that she felt uncomfortable, although she is glad to hear it. The guy jokes that if she says that clothes are also a waste, she will have to learn to live uncomfortably. The girl, with a passionate look, declares that she will show what proper spending is. The girl gives instructions that she would prefer boots with pigskin lining and low heels, and the salespeople note her particular taste. The salesman asks the girl what kind of hat she likes, and she replies that hats don't suit her and asks him to come up with different headwear. The girl is told that she will need sun protection and asks for the brim to be shortened and the decorations to be kept simple. The guy is surprised that she is so confident and calm in the clothing store, and the girl explains that she has ordered clothes for others many times, citing the example of exchanges between children at school and in legal practice. The girl with blue hair says that she herself has always worn only a military uniform, so the army seemed like a good place to her. She recalls how Iris always stood out to those around her. Despite the kindness of her neighbors, they were shunned, and schools refused to accept her. The guy says that in order for children not to be ignored, they should at least be dressed well. The girl unexpectedly advises him to hire a tutor, which surprises the guy. The guy clarifies that it is possible to keep a home tutor in the Archduke's residence, but the girl needed something else. She explains that even for high nobles, it is not customary to move younger brothers and sisters to the house of a married sister. The girl admits that this is true and tells how she fed and raised children on a small salary, and is glad that Eric did not have to pay for clothes. The guy thinks that he himself had to spend a lot of money to pretend in front of his family. The girl looks at the blue fabric and says that she likes it, and the guy asks to continue. The girl is told that this fabric is very expensive and was brought from a distant coast, which surprises and worries her because of the high price. The guy says to use all the expensive fabric because it suits the girl very well, and she is shocked by this decision. The girl is surprised, and the guy reminds her that she herself promised to show what embezzlement is, and now she is doing it. The craftswoman confirms that, thanks to the heroine's tall and slender body, this fabric will really suit her. The girl looks at the proposed design of a dress with long flowing sleeves and is amazed by the idea. The guy thinks with a slight smile about how hard it is to believe that a person who is used to wearing only a military uniform can have so much fun. The boy reflects that the heroine probably imagined a similar choice countless times when she was choosing things for the younger ones. He notes that if it were Chloe, she would give up her share to take care of the younger ones and would not regret anything, but something stops him. Looking at the girl, the guy decides that taking her was the right decision. The girl suddenly shows the guy a piece of paper, attracting his attention. She smiles cheerfully, asks his opinion, and declares that she showed real class. The guy looks at the piece of paper in his hand and says, stunned, "Oh my God." The girl cheerfully asks if he is surprised and muses that they should also buy a house. He suddenly offers to get rid of the house where her family lived and asks how she feels about it. The girl reasons that it is not safe to keep the Duchess's home on such a street and agrees that it is reasonable. The guy suggests moving temporarily, but notes that it is impossible to get rid of the house completely and asks why. The girl explains that the house cannot be disposed of because it is unknown when the parents will return. The guy silently calls them irresponsible people who have been living abroad for many years. The girl adds that the newly purchased house will immediately become famous, so the parents will be able to find everything, and the reason is not only the parents. She remarks out loud that after the divorce, it will be funny to live in the house that her ex-husband bought. The guy sadly realizes that we are talking about divorce and says, "I understand." The girl is surprised that the guy has become silent and wonders if he has become bored. She wonders why he would wait next to a woman choosing clothes and looks at him thoughtfully. Even when wearing an expensive and beautiful dress, she feels a little awkward. The girl wonders if it might be because these clothes aren't hers after all, and she feels like everything looks wrong. But she is advised not to worry about it because everything suits her very well. She carefully examines herself in the mirror along with her reflection. The guy sits facing her, and she wonders if she misheard. She confirms to herself that she really couldn't hear that from him. The girl admits that the dress is really not bad, although it seems unfamiliar, but it is beautiful and comfortable. She notes that everything would be fine if it weren't for the huge price tag, which shocks her. The girl remembers that she still needs to buy a new house, despite this holiday of endless zeros. The girl thinks that such expensive clothes mean nothing to Curtis, but she herself cannot get used to it and feels that these things do not suit her. She realizes that she never became a real archduchess, and their entire marriage was just a performance on stage. She dreams that when she leaves this stage, she will be able to return to her true essence. The girl tells herself that she doesn't want to be the only one who feels sorry for herself, walking away from the happy crowd alone. She is sitting on a red sofa and someone gestures towards her, after which she wonders why she feels sad. The guy wonders if she's okay and notices that he has the same expression on his face as always. He considers her a confusing person and says out loud that today she managed to play the role of the Archduchess, but it will not be like this forever. They sit opposite each other and the girl asks if he appreciated her work, and he asks if this is why she sent her younger children. The guy warns that not everyone in high society will be as easy to communicate with as Agatha. He adds that women will be especially picky, and the girl retorts that he speaks as if he had experienced it himself and talks about the expectations placed on each other. A male voice advises the girl not to contact Lieutenant Dubois for a while, and she asks again in surprise. The guy says that it doesn't matter what happened before, because now she's his wife, and relationships with other men will be troublesome for her, to which she embarrassedly remarks that he heard everything. The girl explains that she and Lieutenant Dubois are just friends, and most of the guards know this story. He, not paying any attention to her explanations, advises her not to scratch anything and not to get nervous, and she wearily agrees. The guy doubts the very possibility of friendship between a man and a woman. The girl reacts with bewilderment and privately considers this nonsense. She suddenly realizes that Curtis simply doesn't know what friendship is because he's an outcast, and says that she feels uncomfortable discussing the topic. The girl ironically thinks that she works with a guy who doesn't even have friends and jokes that she shouldn't be paid a friend's allowance for this. A girl remembers when it was announced that the adjutant would be a woman, she decided to try to take this position herself, and the guy next to her was sad that he was left behind. The guy persuades Agatha to accept the inevitable, reminding her that because of this, their mother has a headache and cannot sleep, because Agatha categorically does not want to get married. Agatha cries and shouts in tears that if her mother has a headache, she should take medicine. She muses that insomnia can be cured, but unrequited love for the Archduke cannot, and her feelings will never reach Curtis. The girl tells Agatha that she is simply sorry for her tears, and nothing more. Agatha thinks with bitterness that this woman does not love the Archduke at all, and not just does not love him, and he feels a certain degree of contempt for him. The young man tells Agatha to stop and leave with him, adding that Curtis has no feelings for her and she knew it 3 years ago, even after such humiliation. Agatha, in anger, sharply replies not to talk to her about the humiliation. Agatha runs away, screaming that she is sincere, and the guy calls her by name. The guy in the carriage says that everything is fine and that she will get hungry and come back when asked if he should chase after her. Agatha is watched from the sidelines, allowing her to cool her head a little and give her time to come to her senses. A girl with long blonde hair and tears thinks angrily about how she hates everyone around her. The girl recalls events from 3 years ago when she cried in front of her brother. She thinks about the woman who married the Archduke despite having no feelings, and remembers her mother, who does not understand her feelings, but pushes her to get married. The girl realizes that the one she loves, the amazing Archduke, is not going to marry her. She runs away in despair, screaming that she hates everyone and will never marry an ordinary man from the street. The girl suddenly finds herself in an unfamiliar and gloomy alley and, confused, asks herself where she is. She looks around, notices the dangerous atmosphere, and realizes that she came to this place without thinking about the consequences. A girl witnesses a suspicious deal between 2 men involving some white powder. She thinks she'd better get back as quickly as possible and peers cautiously around the corner, noticing a woman ahead. Suddenly, she stops and exclaims in surprise, seeing something unexpected. A girl with long blonde hair notices a woman in a noble dress in the window and wonders in surprise who she is. She realizes that this woman is Isabel La Glintran and watches her closely from afar. Hiding around the corner, the girl wonders why such a woman would be in the alley and wonders if she is a spy. She decides that her own experiences are more important than what is happening around her and considers whether to ask her brother about the rumors about the candidate for Archduke. A girl with purple hair lies happily on a bed among sweets looking carefree. She dreams that she doesn't know how much longer she can live like this, but she wants to enjoy this moment of peace. Outside the palace window, a peaceful atmosphere reigns, but the narrator emphasizes that after the honeymoon, this calm turned out to be deceptive. In the palace, men in military uniform discuss the main character's appearance and motivation for marriage behind her back with sarcastic remarks. A high-ranking military officer congratulates a young couple on their wedding in a majestic hall. Admiral Victor sits sternly on the dais receiving a message from His Majesty. The wedding of Brigadier General Berg and Lieutenant Amboise provokes violent reactions among colleagues, divided into three main categories. Some sympathize with Chloe Amboise, wondering how one can be married to a brigadier general. People discuss Chloe's toxic ambitions, suggesting that her aspirations are only aimed at career advancement and status. The theme becomes Chloe's family situation, where money and power are considered more important than her personality. Opinions about Chloe are divided, with rumors of her changes and motivations being confirmed during drinking parties. An argument breaks out among colleagues, and one of the men asks the other to be quiet in order to keep the situation under control. The leader of the squad, Dubois, appears in the frame, creating a tense atmosphere with his stern appearance. The two men defend themselves by saying that their jokes were harmless and did not touch on the feelings of others. The royal guard issues a statement that jokes that insult the Archduchess are unacceptable, adding an official tone. The tense situation is ended by the commander, who warns of possible consequences and demands an explanation from the jokers. The officer warns that if anyone else opens their mouth like this, life in the guard will become unbearable. Two men in military uniform discuss what happened, and one blames the other for causing the problem. One officer is surprised by Chloe's behavior towards the general and suggests to the other that they eat and relax. On the breakfast tray, a hand holds a plate, and one of the men asks if the other has heard from Chloe. Over breakfast, the officers wonder why one of them didn't discuss the relationship with Chloe when he escorted her. The man with dark green hair denies communicating with Chloe, and the second one is indignant. The officer states that if he had been called to accompany Chloe, he would have found out everything. The question is raised as to why Chloe was not given a personal escort now that she is a royal. The green-haired officer sharply replies that Admiral Victor will decide. The black officer angrily demands silence, indicating that the discussion is uninteresting. The dark-haired officer explains that ever since Chloe got married, everything in her life has looked much better, including the luxurious magical car she arrived in today. The red-haired officer expresses surprise that his friend, who just yesterday criticized the brigadier general, suddenly married him, calling the situation absurd. At the table, two men discuss how Chloe is now part of the royal family. The hero's internal monologue notes that the reasons for what is happening are not so simple, and he now reflects on his own future and personal desires after the news of Chloe's wedding. The main characters appear in formal uniforms against the backdrop of a lavish wedding ceremony, and the red-haired officer wonders if the right choice was made. Against the backdrop of a wedding hall, a character with red hair reflects on the fact that the bride has chosen a military uniform instead of a regular wedding dress and considers this a political gesture. The red-haired officer is surprised by the idea of making the most intimate family situation public. The character watches the couple embrace and again wonders if this is the right choice, as choosing a partner does not result in respect from others. He recalls that Chloe knew the man she chose better than anyone else because she worked with him and saw the real him. In a warm, calm interior, the red-haired officer asks himself the final question: why did Chloe choose this particular man? At breakfast, the officer with dark green hair is surprised that his interlocutor really did not hear anything, and he replies that he knows nothing. The red-haired friend notices that Chloe has indeed been keeping her relationship under wraps. The internal monologue informs us that the words "secret relationship" are too strange to apply to Chloe and her husband. Chloe warns the man not to ask her to cry and tell the story of her love later. The man mentally notes that he is not at all interested in someone else's love story, and this topic is not important to him. The confused red-haired man realizes that he just wanted to know if the girl was really okay. He doubts whether he has the right to ask such a question, feels offended, and wonders if it is true that he has simply been pushed out of the circle of trust. An image of a girl in a light dress appears in the middle of a floral background, and the man admits that he simply often felt her distance. The man reflects on his behavior, admitting that he acted distantly and awkwardly and regrets it. He remembers the moment when he failed to support Chloe, even when Agatha ignored her because of him, and feels that he was powerless to change anything. The appearance of a man who is compared to a prince on a white horse changes the atmosphere among the military. The red-haired hero is asked to accompany others, but he himself feels superfluous and removed from the main events. The character suffers internally from the fact that Chloe is now called Her Grace the Archduchess and feels useless. The girl with long blonde hair smiles warmly, and someone is surprised to recognize her as Lady Sarah. The guests invite Sarah to sit at the common table and ask how she's doing and whether she has eaten. Sarah explains that she came to ask a question about a personal problem and is given special attention. Sarah asks for advice because her mother wants to invite Her Serene Highness the Archduchess to a meeting. The dark-haired officer apologizes that the request is too difficult, but informs that Chloe is now declining all invitations. The red-haired commander asks to tell his mother that it is not only about her, and adds that she needs to be more polite in conversation. All participants in the conversation are surprised by what is happening and are aware of their role in the situation. The young officer claims that in fact their mothers were also denied a meeting with the Archduchess, despite rumors of his intimacy with her. He enthusiastically calls himself Chloe's best friend and promises to be sure to convey Lady Sarah's request if communication with the Archduchess takes place. The guests jokingly discuss the idea of hosting a tea party for the three families at their home, but the proposal is called excessive and suspicious. The red-haired man says goodbye and leaves, causing confusion among his interlocutors for his behavior. The young man reassures Lady Sarah, telling her not to worry about the request. Leaving the room, the red-haired hero shows his frustration and stubbornness. A blonde man in dress uniform asks what message they want to convey to him. An adult man, an advisor, or an admiral says to have a housewarming party. The girl in uniform is shocked to learn that she has to organize a particularly grand housewarming party for the entire aristocracy and the royal family. They explain to her that she must organize a banquet dedicated to the 28th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations with Glintrand, since the engagement between the duchy and General Berg fell through, and at least the celebration must take place at the highest level. A girl with purple hair in a military uniform asks why such responsibility fell to her, and hears in response that now she, too, is part of the royal family. The adult man notes that there are two much more experienced members of the royal family, and the crown princess is very ill. The blonde man in uniform ironically suggests that the princess's suffering is the work of the king, and the heroine is inwardly surprised by his words. The advisor jokingly says that there is no point in discussing this, and the blonde looks absolutely unperturbed, which amazes the heroine. They are discussing another noble lady, the Marquise of Flandre, about whom there are rumors that she has been assigned another job. The heroine comes to the conclusion that this situation does not play into their hands, and there is no point in discussing it either, and in her thoughts she notes that the interlocutor understands Curtis's position. The advisor asks his subordinates to carry out the assignment with the utmost responsibility. The two officers say they will prepare diligently, but add that it is not just about preparing for the banquet. The blonde says that it was he who introduced Officer Berg to the Navy and formally brought the main characters together, joking that thanks to his interlocutor, his life became harmonious. The advisor ironically asks if the character's current life resembles happy harmony and advises to look under his feet, hinting at real difficulties. The general is reminded that every time he enters the office, he steps on the same tile as if the others were covered with something unpleasant, and this shows his strangeness. If the general comes with someone else, he always stays exactly 2 tiles away, just like now. They are told that if you are going to do something, you have to do it right, and you can't so obviously demonstrate the distance between you, because even a naive person will notice it. The blonde smiles and admits that you can't fool an old soldier and reminds them that a lot depends on them. The girl reflects that any perceptive person would have immediately noticed their distance, and she finds it strange that they were not caught. The admiral humorously notes that the lieutenant got a wonderful husband, and the heroine herself is surprised by his words. The man says he doesn't want to discuss it in person and suggests she go listen to it herself. A blonde man in dress uniform gestures, inviting you to take his hand. The girl wonders with bewilderment and sarcasm whether she has gone crazy from such a proposal. Walking past the soldiers, who jokingly call them newlyweds, the girl holds back a smile, but in her soul, she is clearly irritated by what is happening. The blonde laughs, and the heroine irritably pulls her hand away, showing obvious dissatisfaction with the contacts. They discuss the admiral's advice and come to the conclusion that their problem is precisely the distance between them. The girl looks at him with a hint of irony and says that she has to apologize for something. The internal monologue suggests that if others see such an expression on their face, rumors will immediately appear about discord in the couple after only 2 weeks of marriage. The blonde guy says that he is pleased to hear that she is doing something on advice, but the heroine thinks that she doesn't really like this advice. Against the backdrop of the castle's architecture, they discuss what the admiral is waiting for. It turns out that someone around him wants to quit. The blonde asks the heroine directly if the idea of quitting is interesting, but immediately states that it is impossible. He explains that the king tried to remove her from her position as adjutant, but failed despite his best efforts. The guy reminds the girl of the unforgettable contract she signed when she became an adjutant, and she ironically calls it slavery. A document with the royal seal is shown, emphasizing that such authority cannot be challenged even by the king himself. In order to remove Chloe from office, the king would have had to obtain permission from her immediate superior, and upon realizing this, he abandoned the idea. Chloe notes that her interlocutor looks happy, and he replies that there is nothing to be sad about, because he is happy that he caused trouble to the king. It turns out that this is why the admiral once told Chloe that she had a wonderful husband. Chloe remembers that she used to consider the admiral her protector and reflects on this. A lot has happened while Chloe was away from work, and the other man asks if he can't protect her too. Chloe asks directly what is in his lordship's interests, since formally it would be more convenient for him to get rid of her at the behest of the king. She reasons that it would be better to throw her to the mercy of the king and prepare for the next step, since a lot of money was spent for this. Chloe reminds him that she was originally planted next to him as bait for the palace, but the blonde asks her to keep quiet, because there are a lot of extra ears around. She suddenly pulls herself together, mentally reminding herself to watch her language in any situation. Chloe looks at the man in surprise as he silently turns around and quickly walks away, leaving her confused. Chloe is confused as to why her husband, who had just been talking about being careful in public, just turned around and walked away, leaving her alone. The blonde notices Chloe's disappearance and calls out to her in surprise by her rank of lieutenant. The girl ends up on the ground near the pool, complaining of pain while lying in an awkward position. The man rushes towards her in surprise, asking if she is okay, and Chloe sarcastically hopes that the gardeners do not catch her eye at that moment. She apologizes and suggests they keep walking, and the man wonders to himself if she thinks he's trash. The blonde looks at Chloe in confusion. He reflects that he has been thinking about the situation for some time now, but he believes that the lieutenant is looking at everything too clearly and internally tries to explain himself. Chloe apologizes, asks him to let her know if there's something wrong with her, promising to improve, and the man wonders if he should even say it. The man experiences an internal conflict, believing that he was trying to convey something completely different, and feels that something is stuck in his throat. Chloe reiterates her thoughts that it would be logical to leave her while the king clings and makes his plans behind her back, because that is what so much money was spent for. In the garden, a blonde officer reproaches a bowed female soldier, and she apologizes. The panorama of a well-kept park is accompanied by an explanation that the hero has learned to sense the presence of people since childhood due to constant assassination attempts. The text clarifies that Chloe is also cautious, so Curtis's outrage was unfounded, while the shot shows their feet on the tiles. The internal monologue reveals how the words he heard made him angry and question whether it was appropriate to say such things in front of others. He admits that he could leave her, but promises to improve, and the girl hangs her head. Turning around, he dryly warns her not to repeat the mistake and mentally blames himself. Overcome by a strange feeling, he thinks that the lieutenant is thinking short-sightedly and the moment has been lost. He realizes that he was wrong to call her actions a mistake and was rude to a person with a similar weakness. The girl, hiding her face, feels heaviness and is nervous because of the supposed hostility in his gaze. Pulling herself together, she says she has something she wants to tell him and internally decides to apologize while he waits for an answer. Chloe formally addresses the decorated blonde as Brigadier General Berg. Curtis wonders silently that she calls him simply Brigadier General without the usual respect. A heated Chloe, almost touching his face, demandingly clarifies whether this is what he wanted to tell her. He asks, puzzled, if the lieutenant thinks he's trash. Chloe admits to herself with a sad look that she did make a mistake. The general notices that the lieutenant is acting short-sightedly in the middle of the palace, and Chloe blushes in embarrassment. He again asks coldly if it is worth saying such things in front of other people. In another room, Chloe's sister advises her to moderate her character and live a calmer life. A tired Chloe, sprawled on the couch, stubbornly tells her sister to just do as she wants. She comes to the conclusion that if she breaks her sister's character, then her sister herself will seem to disappear. A girl with dark hair and glowing eyes hears ominous advice to kill her opponent. The officer reports that Curtis Schonberg respects Chloe Amboise as his superior. Chloe reflects on how respect was a condition of her marriage to the officer and asks about a possible mistake. The officer orders the Brigadier General to take 2 steps forward. Chloe notes to herself that he is more obedient than she thought, but she feels uncomfortable looking up. Chloe tells you to sit on a park bench. She asks him how many years he has been serving, and he replies that it has been 12 years. While talking about training, they find out that a new recruit is trained for 2 months, and their marriage lasts 10 days. Chloe asks if this period should be considered training and says that newbies make mistakes during preparation. She admits her mistake and hears an apology in response. Chloe smiles shyly and mentally admits how exciting everything is. Chloe admires how quickly Curtis apologizes and mentally commends the author of their prenuptial agreement. She reproaches Curtis for his rudeness and doubts whether he will be able to cope with married life. Curtis, covering his face with his hand, hears the question whether he loves Chloe. Chloe accuses Curtis of treating his wife worse than a rookie and questions him about patience. Chloe is surprised by his silence, and after a pause, he asks if she is in a bad mood and offers to return it. Chloe looks at the engagement ring and asks if she should return it. She says that if it were possible, she would have obeyed His Majesty long ago, and then someone asks a question about her informal speech. Curtis apologizes for being rude, admitting that he went too far, and Chloe is surprised. The man taking the ring off his hand asks not to say such things. Curtis suddenly pulls Chloe towards him on the bench, and she gasps in shock. Chloe whispers what he is doing, and Curtis orders her not to move, telling her that a person is watching them. Turning around, Chloe does indeed notice the observer in the distance and realizes that her husband was right. Still hugging her, Curtis angrily demands that she let him go, but immediately apologizes, admitting that her words hurt him. Chloe wonders if he is being sincere or if he is just acting, worried about whether strangers will overhear their conversation. He confirms that she is right, promises to respect her, and gently presses his cheek to hers, which makes her feel ticklish. Smiling, Curtis remarks that it would be wasteful to squander one of their 3 chances at reconciliation so easily. Chloe, with a light poke of her finger to his forehead, echoes the advice of her sister Leah, whom he also trusts. With a straight face, she states that anything you try to hold on to for too long eventually turns to shit. After this, Chloe giggles, suddenly pinches him painfully, and Curtis cries out, remaining trapped in her arms. He admits that he cannot leave her to His Majesty. Chloe wonders how she can leave a woman in front of the king who will be attacked even for a few words. He says that he will have to use any means available to protect her, although Chloe herself feels that he is doing this more for himself. Curtis swears that he does not plan to throw Chloe to his brother as bait and would rather go to Glintrand. Chloe is surprised by his seriousness and for the first time perceives his words as sincere for her personally. She notes that, yes, he says this on purpose in public for prying ears. The Brigadier General understands that he has now accurately expressed the main thing and is happy about it. From the outside, someone notes that everyone is still watching and continuing to follow their couple. The couple is being ironic. Maybe now the Brigadier General will even bend his knee to give rise to new rumors of love. Curtis notices that their clothes have gotten dirty in the heat of their embrace, but such trifles don't matter to him now. Brigadier General Berg reflects on how easily he fell for Chloe's provocations. Chloe seriously asks him if she should return the ring, and Berg himself realizes how much these words hurt him. He even remembers her embrace, emphasizing that everything that happened filled him with emotions. One of the observers is humorously amazed by Chloe's actions and notes how she has embraced Admiral Victor's teachings, while Curtis believes that it is now important to apply the lessons learned. Curtis cheerfully asks if they should hold hands and abruptly pulls Chloe along with him. He wonders why his wife is embarrassed, since their union is a well-known fact, and asks her to cooperate, but she stubbornly refuses. Chloe admits that she's never been a fan of holding hands, but now she realizes it doesn't matter as much since they're both wearing gloves. The men debate whether the Archduke should maintain his dignity, and Curtis counters that holding hands with Chloe is more important than public opinion. Chloe decides to walk faster to avoid unnecessary attention. She explains that she chose the shortest path to the knights and asks her husband not to talk to her, and he in response admits that he is incredibly happy. Curtis, taking Chloe's hand, says that he wants to talk to her and reminds her that they are married, and Chloe asks him to at least shut up for a little while and claims that he is acting funny. Curtis insists and stubbornly declares that he does not want to back down. An argument breaks out in the palace. He is reproached for the fourth time for disobeying the king's decree, but he firmly replies that he will still refuse, citing his legal rights as the prince of the Ivanes family. The king angrily reminds him of his duties as a member of the Ivanes family and is outraged that the banquet has been entrusted to his wife, whom he considers incompetent. Curtis calmly clarifies that this is a diplomatic reception. In response, the king agrees while emphasizing that the Archduchess remains a lieutenant of the royal guard and must obey orders according to the military regulations of the House of Ivane. Curtis states that he is performing his duty as a prince solely within the framework of military discipline. The king, losing his temper, calls Curtis a wayward puppy, but notes that he is only fanning the flames of conflict. Chloe muses that it would be more logical to throw her to the king's mercy, while Curtis plots his next move. Curtis himself thinks that if he had removed Chloe, he would not have seen this furious expression on the king's face, and this amuses him. Curtis muses that his embrace with Chloe yesterday was merely a spontaneous reaction to the release of emotions, comparing it to encouraging a soldier after a battle. He wonders if he should reward her with something nice, like going shopping together, knowing how much she loves clothes. Curtis calmly states that if all is said, then he will leave, to which the king shouts after him not to return. Curtis takes Chloe's hand and invites her to go, and Chloe asks if everything is okay, noting that the king is clearly furious. He suggests that since things have turned out this way, why not drive His Majesty to a white heat? In his joy, he asks Chloe if she likes everything that is happening, which confuses the girl. Curtis is filled with energy, mentally noting that he is always especially cheerful when he sees the king's displeased face. As they hold hands and walk together, it is noted that Curtis's good mood did not last long. An encounter with 3 officers along the way ruins the moment when they are surprised to see Curtis holding Chloe's hand. One of the officers is horrified to realize that Curtis has voluntarily taken someone's hand and that it turns out to be Chloe Amboise. The officer angrily asks if what is happening is not a violation of all laws, and someone mentally notes that this guy has completely lost his mind. Lieutenant Desbois and Corporal Tournier formally greet the general, and everyone acts as if nothing had happened, despite their bewilderment at what they saw. Curtis calmly asks what is illegal about this, and Chloe mentally quips that it's all just a dream. Lieutenant Ezra, trying to justify himself, declares that the beauty of Lieutenant Amboise is the real crime, which confuses everyone. Curtis gives a muted thanks for the compliment to his wife and thinks to himself that someone has clearly gone crazy. With a grim smile, he says that it was too much to comment on someone else's wife. The officers sheepishly apologize for their overly familiar attitude towards marriage and promise to improve. Curtis notices that Lieutenant Desbois is apologizing when he did nothing, to which he replies that as a second squad leader, he shares responsibility for the first squad leader. Chloe wearily asks him to stop, noting that it's not funny anymore, and reminds him that they are all close friends. Curtis asks if Corporal Tournier is on that list, and Sarah explains that she came to see Lieutenant Berg on a personal matter, and Curtis asks what it is. Sarah formally congratulates Chloe on her wedding and explains that her mother, the Countess de Tournier, would very much like to personally greet the Archduchess. Curtis asks if it's just the Archduchess, and Sarah quickly adds that it's the Archduke too. Chloe notes that their mother can be proud of having 2 daughters in the army, but understands that it is not easy for her and offers to visit her. Curtis says they'll discuss the details on the way, which surprises Sarah. Sarah wonders to herself whether he will accompany her and whether it is possible to take the Archduke's arm. Curtis remarks that he has just returned to duty and is very busy, so there is little time, and Sarah quickly agrees. George asks Chloe if she's okay. She says yes, and the accompanying text notes that he still doesn't understand what the problem is. George asks if everything was okay with Chloe while he was away, and despite her assurances, notes that he was worried about her marriage. George is worried about Chloe's health, asking if she has lost weight, how she eats, and she assures him that everything is fine and jokes about caviar. Chloe's internal monologue notes that George hasn't changed at all, which reassures her, and she tenderly confirms this to herself. The protagonist notices that he has a completely different relationship with some people, and after a short pause, he leaves. George is surprised that his friend is already leaving because, in his opinion, he hasn't seen Chloe for a long time, but he considers the greeting sufficient and reminds George not to be late for the commander's meeting. After he leaves, George calls his friend a bore and does not understand why he behaves this way. Chloe advises him not to pay attention to it, explaining that he has become angrier lately and says that she was prepared for this and would be surprised by his friendliness. George states that if someone doesn't like him, they shouldn't be forced to communicate, and Chloe strongly disagrees with this position. Chloe turns to George with sadness and tears. Joyful George asks Chloe to call him by that name in front of others, and also to be sure to invite him first to an official reception, which Chloe is sincerely surprised by. He fantasizes about being presented at all the capital's balls as the Archduchess's best friend and the capital's most eligible bachelor, and Chloe reacts to this with a smile. Chloe is inwardly glad that George is still behaving as usual and laughing sincerely. She decides not to dwell on difficult feelings because everything happened absolutely spontaneously and nothing can be changed. The first day at work after the wedding passes surprisingly calmly, and Chloe relaxes a little, doing paperwork in the office. An unexpected visit disturbs her peace and discipline. An uninvited guest appears. Chloe asks the stranger in surprise who she is, and she reproachfully notices the mess. Is this how a duchess's office should look? A powerful woman with red hair bursts into the room, loudly declaring that the workplace of a person of royal blood should not be in such a state. The new arrival introduces herself as Madame Bring, an assistant personally chosen by the king to look after Chloe. When asked about the purpose of her visit, Madame Bring says that she came on behalf of the king to a gala reception to mark the 28th anniversary of diplomatic relations with Glintrand. Madame notes that the royal family's assistance has become more difficult to provide since Chloe has retained her status as a duchess thanks to the monarch's generosity. One of the officers politely asks Madame to sit down out of respect for His Majesty, noting that only the Duke himself can give orders in the office. Madame Bring retorts that she is not ordering but kindly offering, asking rhetorically if the Duke is so harsh as to forbid her from offering the position, and the characters internally note her unusualness. Madame formally asks to be allowed to help the lady, although Chloe thinks she is not too happy about this and invites her to go into the office, and Madame in response is indignant that the room is too small for a lady of the court her age. Two worried characters peer out from behind the door, discussing why they have to deal with a dangerous situation. One woman complains of pain in her knees and is advised to sit on the bed if it is difficult. The woman with red hair is indignant, while the other calmly advises to continue standing. The woman sits down on the bed in despair, rightly noting that even maids are not treated like that, and laments the appearance of yet another unhappy lady because of the heroine. The blue-haired girl thinks that she expected her rival to have a strong character, but she turned out to be a talkative old lady and notices that even the king cares little about her. The woman emotionally wonders why the other so stubbornly rejects His Majesty's favor, and adds that the Duchess acts in a similar way. A young man appears and cheerfully tells them to hold on, discussing how the Duke also behaves the same way, and the king constantly praises one of the heroines. The red-haired woman grumbles about her headache because of Curtis, and the blue-haired heroine decides to get down to business with this background noise. She indignantly shouts that she was not allowed to finish speaking, accusing the heroine of violating etiquette. The lady sarcastically calls for gratitude to the king, because such a good-natured man as he could say everything straight to his face, and the blue-haired heroine wearily clutches her head. The dialogue takes place against the backdrop of a building where one of the heroines clarifies that Madame Brigg has arrived by order of the king to help organize a reception for the 28th anniversary of the establishment of relations with Glintrand. The woman asks a question about how royal receptions are conducted in general, surprising her interlocutor. The blue-haired heroine asks again if the question is serious and admits that she has never had to organize or even attend such events since she is from a family that was granted a title. The girl with blue hair recalls that even the wedding banquet after her engagement to the Archduke was the first such event for her and is surprised by this. The lady reminds that her interlocutor occupies third place in the court hierarchy and is outraged by her public admission of such disgrace. The blue-haired heroine asks if ignorance is really a shame, to which she hears a decisive confirmation. The woman emotionally states that high position implies high expectations and the ruler must know everything. The blue-haired heroine explains that it was not for nothing that the king was against it, and therefore asks the madam for advice right now. The heroine says that since the king sent madam to her, it means her task is to help justify these expectations, adding that the ruler really should know everything, but this does not come from birth. The girl announces with a smile that now madame must make a real ruler out of her. The blue-haired girl gets up from her chair and asks in surprise that this is not what was meant. She wonders if madame has come only to scold the third most powerful person in the kingdom. Chloe, having gained some experience in the service as Curtis's adjutant, realized for herself that high-ranking persons are not obliged to delve into everything themselves. It is explained that important and irreplaceable people only do important things, and they don't even have time for that. The brief explanation states that menial tasks can be delegated to replaceable employees, such as Chloe herself used to be. Organizing a royal banquet is an important matter, but it is no longer appropriate for such a high-ranking person as Chloe Ladavia Berg to carry it out entirely on her own. Now, as noted, such trifles as training in conducting banquets become the responsibility of Madame Brigg herself. Madame Brigg begins to explain that first it is necessary to determine the purpose of the banquet and make a list of mandatory guests. They say the list includes Green Trans delegation and anyone associated with the country, and then they clarify the details. The blue-haired girl smiles and notes that since His Majesty himself sent Madam, she is, of course, already aware of all the nuances, and now she must explain everything herself. The entire delegation is invited, and from the local nobility, Countess Annelle and her husband, Baron Leblanc, Viscount Fleur and his wife, the family of Count Rihanna and Baron Worth. Invitations need to be sent to these very individuals, and the blue-haired heroine is surprised to note how many guests attend royal events, wondering what to write in the invitations. Madame advises to include touching words about the 28th anniversary of diplomatic relations and to be sure to write it by hand. The heroine gets upset when she imagines how many handwritten invitations she will have to send, but decides that it is difficult, but inevitable. She recalls that the only official handwriting she has, thanks to her work as an adjutant to General Berg, is the official palace font. The heroine wonders whether the guests will appreciate such handwriting, since any other official could write for her and no one would notice the difference. Madame reminds that, in addition to everything else, she also needs to remember all the nobles by sight, and the heroine recalls the painful lessons before the wedding. Another important skill is to properly receive guests. The heroine proudly says that after the audience with the king, there were no complaints about her because Curtis arranged a whole circus there. The excited madam asks if the heroine knows how to greet foreign aristocrats. When the heroine attempts to offer a standard greeting, Madame warns her of the impending shame for such liberties, revealing that her weak spot has been discovered. Madam strictly instructs the back and waist should not bend. Keep your back straight and move your left leg back, bending only the knee. The blue-haired girl admits that it is difficult for her to understand just from explanations and asks the lady to show everything clearly. Madame is carefully preparing to begin the demonstration, drawing the student's attention to herself. In the detailed instructions, Madame teaches that while standing straight, tighten your abs, then step back with your left toe, bend your right knee, and lean your body forward slightly. After the performance, Madame proudly declares that this is the perfect execution of the bow. The blue-haired girl delightedly calls Madame a real master of bows. The girl receives a luxurious, richly decorated book and wonders what kind of object it is. They explain to her that this is the protocol for the royal banquet, with all the records of banquets for the last 20 years, and advise her to read it to help her prepare. The blue-haired girl thanks Lieutenant Noel for his help and tries to listen to his advice, mentally noting his concern. She reads the book, amazed at the presence of such detailed notes and the fact that everything was done by hand, considering Lieutenant Noel a real angel. The girl wonders if Lieutenant Noel brought the book because he heard about her intention to go to the Royal Archives. The young man says with a serious expression that state affairs are not children's games and important events must be documented. He sarcastically advises that instead of being touched, it would be better to remember at least one letter from the book. The girl replies that if his lordship finds time for criticism, then it would be a good idea to learn from the lieutenant, who rewrote everything by hand. Surprised, he asks if Noel really did the rewriting himself, and the girl notes that he doesn't make anyone work overtime, unlike others. She decides to leave to learn at least something else and quickly leaves the room. The two other characters, peeping from behind the door, breathe a sigh of relief at the tense scene, and the girl greets Madame Brig and confirms her willingness to talk. Madame Brig wonders if the respect shown to her earlier was truly sincere praise and modesty. The blue-haired heroine accepts this challenge and promises not to joke anymore, but to answer honestly. To a direct question with a hint of resentment from Madame, the girl directly and seriously answers that no, and Madame sincerely says that she just wanted to help, to which she receives an understanding answer. The girl admits that she is well aware that, in addition to the king's order, the Madame's task is to educate such an uncouth person as she is and not let her disgrace herself. The lady agrees that at least she didn't come to humiliate her, and the heroine internally agrees with this. It is noted in the thoughts that if Madame wanted to curry favor with the king, she could have deliberately given Chloe false information and made her look like a laughingstock. Now the girl sees that Madame has a real sense of responsibility and fully lives up to her reputation. Chloe notes that this is a man who knows what dignity and etiquette are, and that the help provided in a short time was absolutely sincere. This is why Chloe apologizes to the older lady for her behavior, realizing that she was just trying to do her job honestly. The girl explains that, like Madame, she treats His Majesty with respect, but as a person, she cannot say that she does not harbor personal grievances, which is why she sometimes allowed herself to be impolite. In response to the question, the girl adds that if Madame wants to retell these words to His Majesty, she will be finished. Chloe says outright that Madame is here to transform her from an ignorant and talkative person into a worthy ruler, so she allowed herself to be frank with her. Madame admits that she does not know His Majesty's true intentions, but came only out of a desire to serve the Ivan's family, emphasizing the sincerity of her motives. The girl, like a proud soldier of Ivanez, steps forward and says that she pays tribute to the Madame's patriotism. The lady perceives the heroine's words with surprise and slight embarrassment. The woman admits that everything is going quite well to begin with and thanks him for his efforts. The heroine thinks with relief whether she succeeded, is glad that everything went well, and notes to herself that the lady is not so scary, but that is not all. The lady notices that the heroine's legs are too long, which makes the stance look unnatural, and advises her to take her back leg half a step back. When asked to do this right now, the lady replies that when else, and the heroine embarrassedly reminds that she is currently on duty. Madame explains that in such cases one must be modest and politely ask for understanding regarding the time. Despite the strict remarks, Madame notes that the heroine's dedication deserves respect, but now the situation is extraordinary. The heroine is confused and indignant that for some reason they attacked her, but she understands that Madame cannot allow the Ivanez house to find itself in an awkward situation. The argument continues. The girl blames the Duke for everything, advising to make claims against him, and the Madame objects that the Duke tries his best to avoid scandals. The girl learns that yesterday afternoon, the general personally took the protocol of the ceremony for the reception from the Royal Archive and is surprised because she thought that these records were prepared by Lieutenant Noel. They explain to her that the lieutenant himself is proof of this since he came and asked in detail about the location of the protocols, referring to the Duke's order. The general appears, wondering whether it makes any difference whether he gave the order or not, and looks at the lieutenant with obvious displeasure. Madame did not expect the Duchess to blame the general for the disgrace, but the general takes part of the responsibility for the situation. The heroine is confused and internally outraged that the general heard their conversation and again appeared at the most inopportune moment. The general, smiling, transfers responsibility to Madame Brig and suggests that she now be fully responsible for the Duchess's education to the end. He reminds that in addition to the diplomatic reception, there is also Eleanor's meeting to attend. Time is running out, so he allows the use of working time for training and asks Madame to do everything possible. The general officially declares that he relies on Madame Brigg, suggesting that they count on her, and the girl is inwardly indignant that all decisions are being made for her. The lady resolutely invites the heroine to go to study, and she reacts to this enthusiasm with bewilderment. The heroine looks away in confusion and mentally asks if the general is in his right mind, seeing his comically joyful reaction. Time passed, and the day when the fruits of Madame Brigg's training had to be demonstrated arrived sooner than expected. At the entrance to the palace, a new character turns to the heroine, turning his attention to her in surprise. A girl with blue hair appears in a formal pink dress, and someone asks in bewilderment if she really came to work. With a menacing and determined face, the heroine answers in the affirmative. She is greeted majestically with words for her to come in and sit in the main place. At Eleanor's gathering, Chloe makes her official entrance, taking center stage at the large table as everyone around her watches the event.